Chapter 1377. Murong, you had no idea what had happened in the Sage Tomb. Even if he knew, he wouldn't have the time to comprehend it. At this moment, the battle between him and the sect master of the Heavenly Light God sect had reached its climax. The massive soul pool had gradually dried up, and one could even see the bottom. However, the sect master of the Heavenly Light God sect was still ferociously devouring Murong Yu's mental energy. In fact, the sect master of the Heavenly Light God sect wanted to exterminate Murong Yu's soul. After all, Murong Yu's desire to get his hands on the supreme artifact of the Heavenly Light God sect had already angered everyone in the sect. No one knew how long this battle had lasted. Perhaps it was just a day, or perhaps it was tens of millions of years. At this moment, Murong Yu was already an arrow at the end of its flight. The soul pool's spiritual energy had already dried up to the bottom. However, the sect master of the Heavenly Light God sect wasn't having a good time either. His mental energy wasn't as strong as before. Even so, Murong Yu wasn't able to kill him. On the contrary, Murong Yu had a higher chance of being killed. Little bastard, my Heavenly Light God sect supreme artifact isn't something you can touch. Today I will kill you. The sect master of the Heavenly Light God sect gritted his teeth and roared. In order to snatch back the supreme artifact, the sect master of the Heavenly Light God sect had burned his soul. The price he had paid was huge. He might not be able to recover even after tens of thousands of years. You want to kill me? If your original body was here, you might be able to kill me. But now? Murong Yu sneered. Even if he couldn't kill the sect master of the Heavenly Light God sect's mental energy, even Hichu wouldn't be able to do so. However, the two of them weren't the only ones here. Little Lolita was here too. Shua. Before Murong Yu could finish his sentence, little Lolita, who had been watching the show from the side, made her move. The huge axe fiercely chopped down, even shattering the space that Murong Yu had been imprisoned in. Pooh! Within the main hall of Daybreak God sect, the sect master of Daybreak God sect spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. His face was pale as he opened his eyes. Sect master, how is it? The other experts in the hall hurriedly inquired with looks of anticipation. However, the sect master of the Heavenly Bright sect shook his head. The other people's expressions changed drastically, and their faces turned gloomy. They failed. Their years of hard work had been wasted, and they had even helped someone else. The Daybreak God sect's sect master's face turned gloomy as killing intent burst out from his eyes. I've already seen that person's appearance. From today onwards, our Daybreak Divine sect will pursue him endlessly until we take back our supreme artifact. Furthermore, this matter must not be leaked out. Otherwise, our Heavenly Dawn God sect will not be far from destruction. The moment news of Murong Yu having a supreme weapon was leaked out, how could their Heavenly Dawn God sect still have a share? Even supreme beings would try to snatch it. Therefore, before they were killed by the Heavenly Dawn God sect, the news of Murong Yu having a supreme weapon would not be leaked out, unless the Heavenly Dawn God sect was forced into a corner and wanted to perish together with Murong Yu. However, where was Murong Yu? Although the sect master of the Heavenly Dawn God sect had seen Murong Yu's appearance, trying to find a person in the holy world was like trying to find a needle in a haystack. However, the methods of the major powers were naturally different. As long as they knew where Tianzong was last seen, they could follow the vine to find Murong Yu. These were the methods of the Heavenly Dawn God sect, so let's not talk about them for now. At this moment, in the Hichu Luoshu, Murong Yu's face was pale as he sat cross-legged on the ground. He was trying his best to cultivate the swordsman word formula to recover his soul energy. However, it was impossible to replenish his soul energy with such a large soul pool in a short period of time. As for the damaged supreme weapon, it was suppressed in the void not far away from Murong Yu. Because it was no longer controlled by the power of the mind, the heavenly purple rosette pagoda did not have any reaction. It just quietly floated in the void. It was like an ordinary pagoda. There was nothing special about it. From afar, the heavenly purple rosette pagoda was emitting a faint purple light. However, there was no damage to it. However, Since Hichu said that the supreme weapon was damaged, there should be a problem with the array inside the supreme weapon. At the beginning, the little lowly walked around the heavenly purple rosette pagoda with interest, constantly sizing it up. However, she soon lost interest in it. It's not as good as my giant axe. The little lowly carried the giant axe and curled her lips. When Murongyu, who was in the middle of cultivating, heard her words, he almost spat out. That was a supreme weapon. The little lowly actually said that the supreme weapon was not as good as her giant axe. If others heard this, wouldn't they be angered to death? However, Murongyu also knew that the little lowly's giant axe was extremely powerful. Moreover, it could ignore power, whether a sacred weapon was good or not depended on its grade. It also depended on whether the sacred weapon was suitable for the user. For example, a warrior was only good at using sabers. He was not good at using swords or spears. However, if he was given a treasured sword, he would not be able to display the power of the treasured sword. In fact, the power of the treasured sword would not be as good as that of an ordinary saber. After a long time, Murongyu recovered some of his soul power and stopped cultivating. He was very curious about this supreme weapon. So this supreme weapon is called the Heavenly Purple Rosette Pagoda. It is the Heavenly Purple Rosette Sovereign's natal sacred weapon. Murongyu's mind entered the Heavenly Purple Rosette Pagoda. Immediately, he received a message. It was said that there were only 10 sovereigns in the holy world. However, although sovereigns were immortal and indestructible, they were not truly immortal and indestructible. Since ancient times, the number of sovereigns that have fallen was uncountable. In Murongyu's Hichu Luoshu, there was a Niwa sacred temple. Niwa was also one of the sovereigns. However, all of them had fallen. Most of them had been killed. Some of them had fallen due to accidents. After they had fallen, their supreme weapons would be left behind. Murongyu felt a feeling from the Heavenly Purple Rosette Pagoda. It seemed that the Heavenly Purple Rosette Sovereign had fought with someone and was killed. The Heavenly Purple Rosette Pagoda had also been damaged in that battle. Of course, Murongyu had not recognized the Heavenly Purple Rosette Pagoda as its master yet. He could not communicate with the Supreme Weapon Spirit. Little Lowly, what should we do with this Supreme Weapon? Murongyu asked Little Lowly. Although he had taken the Supreme Weapon, he would not have known about it if Little Lowly did not tell him. However, how did Little Lowly know? You're asking me what to do? You snatched this Supreme Weapon yourself. What does it have to do with me? Little Lowly looked at Murongyu with a strange expression. This is a Supreme Weapon. Don't tell me you're not tempted? Murongyu looked at Little Lowly with a surprised expression. Little Lowly curled her lips. I don't care. Murongyu suddenly felt puzzled. If it was someone else, they would have already fainted from excitement. However, Little Lowly did not care. Could it be that she had seen a supreme weapon before? Murongyu pondered in his heart. He became more and more curious about Little Lowly's identity. However, his guess that Little Lowly had a supreme weapon behind her became more and more intense. If you refine this supreme artifact, not only will you be able to reach the imperishable realm, but you'll also be able to quickly reach the profound sage realm and ancient sage realm, right? The Little Lowly turned her head to look at Murongyu with a smile. Refine a supreme weapon? Murongyu blushed with shame in his heart. Unless he was crazy, he would not refine the purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower. Otherwise, he would only repair it. If he did not have a suitable supreme weapon when he became a supreme weapon in the future, he would use this purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower as his life-bound supreme weapon. First, let's make the purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower recognize me as its master. Since Little Lowly was not interested, Murongyu did not hold back. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower. At the same time, he sat down cross-legged. His mind power entered the purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower and was about to recognize him as its master. However, just as Murongyu was about to recognize him as its master, an extremely slight, disdainful snort sounded in his ears. A mere undead sage wants to recognize me as its master? You're really overestimating yourself. A sneer sounded, and the disdain was even stronger. The purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower's artifact spirit was actually mocking Murong Yu. Murong Yu immediately became angry and sneered. It's just a broken supreme weapon. Do you think you're so impressive? You want to recognize me as your master? Wait until you become a supreme weapon. Now, leave immediately. The artifact's spirit continued to sneer. Murong Yu could not help but laugh out of extreme anger. Whether it was the Hichu Luoshu, the Inyang Cauldron, or even the Inyang Bao and the sky-shaking arrow, which one of them was inferior to the purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower? The Hichu Luoshu and the others were all supreme weapons in perfect condition. They were much stronger than the purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower. However, Hichu and the others were not arrogant. What was a mere artifact spirit of a broken supreme weapon to be arrogant about? Are you really not willing to recognize me as your master? Murong Yu sneered. The artifact spirit of the supreme weapon did not respond. In that case, what's the use of keeping you? I'll directly refine you to improve my cultivation. Murong Yu sneered. Before he finished speaking, he swallowed the purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower. In the next moment, the purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower appeared in the chaos furnace. You want to refine me with just your strength? You're simply overestimating yourself. The artifact spirit of the supreme weapon continued to sneer. He did not think that Murong Yu had the ability to do so. Murong Yu sneered in his heart. The chaos furnace was known to be able to refine everything. Even the purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower was the same. Thus, with a thought, the primal chaos furnace shook slightly. Instantly, an incomparably powerful force enveloped the purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower. The artifact spirit of the supreme weapon continued to sneer. However, he soon could not laugh anymore. He was shocked to find that the incomparably powerful force had already started to refine the surface of the purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower. Although only a small part of it had been smelted, it was insignificant. However, what if this continued for a long time? The purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower would definitely be completely refined. Once the purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower was completely refined, the artifact spirit would also disappear. Furthermore, Murong Yu did not seem to be joking. Immediately, the artifact spirit of the purple radiant heavenly Rhoda Tower panicked. Although it was arrogant, it did not want to die. Chapter 1378. Hey you, I agree to recognize you as my master. The supreme artifact spirit hurriedly sent out a mental wave to Murong Yu in a panic. However, with its arrogant character, even if it was asking for help, it would still be arrogant and insufferably arrogant. Murong Yu sneered in his heart. Since the supreme artifact spirit was so arrogant, he might as well suppress it until it was obedient. Otherwise, even if it surrendered now, if it played tricks when it was used in the future, it would cause harm to others. Therefore, Murong Yu pretended not to hear it and operated the chaotic furnace to frantically refine the heavenly purple rosy tower. The supreme artifact spirit became more and more anxious and frightened because it saw that the supreme artifact was slowly being refined. At this speed, it believed that it wouldn't take long for the heavenly purple rosy tower to be refined. This is a supreme artifact. Boy, you're actually willing to refine a supreme artifact? Don't you know how precious a supreme artifact is? If you stop refining, I will definitely recognize you as my master and help you become a supreme artifact. The supreme artifact's spirit roared and sent out mental waves. Murong Yu laughed. He didn't believe the supreme artifact spirit's words at all. Moreover, he didn't need the supreme artifact spirit's help at all. Whether it was the Hichu Luoshu or the Inyang Cauldron, they were both stronger than a supreme artifact. It's just a supreme artifact. Have you seen the Hichu Luoshu and the Inyang Cauldron? Do you think you're stronger than them? Murong Yu sneered. The supreme artifact spirit immediately fell silent. Of course, it had seen the Hichu Luoshu and the Inyang Cauldron. Those two treasures gave it a lot of pressure. If Murong Yu could unleash their full power, he would have been able to shatter or refine it in an instant. In fact, Murong Yu's original body was also extremely powerful. Otherwise, even a supreme artifact wouldn't be able to refine it, but Murong Yu, an undead saint, could. And if Murong Yu became stronger and grew into a supreme artifact, he would definitely be able to defeat other supreme artifacts. Thinking of this, the supreme artifact spirit could not help but feel a little regretful. It was only an artifact spirit. It had the right to control the supreme artifact and to recognize it as its master. However, Murong Yu's strength was too weak, and it did not care about Murong Yu at all. However, would the Undying Realm reach the Sovereign Realm? Whether or not he could even reach the Imperishable Realm was still a question. Moreover, because the Purple Light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda was damaged, it was also greatly damaged and needed others to repair it. Although the Heavenly Light God Sect wasn't a sacred ground, they were still powerful enough to constantly repair the Purple Light Heavenly Civ Pagoda. Furthermore, there were a few experts in the Daybreak God Sect that were infinitely close to the Sovereign Realm. Only this kind of person had the qualifications to be recognized by the Purple Light Heavenly Rhoda as its master. As for Murong Yu, therefore, the Supreme Artifact Spirit did not even look at Murong Yu. Therefore, it did not know that Murong Yu was such a heaven-defying person. What made it even more depressed was that Murong Yu did not see it as one of the strongest treasures. He actually wanted to refine and absorb its energy to increase his own cultivation. Murong Yu, stop refining it. I'm willing to submit. I'm willing to submit to you. Seeing the Purple Light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda being refined continuously, the Supreme Artifact Spirit's heart ached. After all, the Supreme Artifact was closely related to it. The more the Purple Light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda was refined, the greater the damage to it. You're willing to submit? Murong Yu stopped refining and asked in a deep voice. The Supreme Artifact Spirit did not say anything. It only opened its mind and said, "You can directly control me. I definitely won't resist." The Supreme Artifact Spirit finally learned its lesson and obediently allowed Murong Yu to control it. It was similar to how Murong Yu controlled other people's souls in the past. In reality, the Supreme Artifact Spirit was not willing to be controlled by Murong Yu. However, there was no other way. If it did not submit, it would be refined by Murong Yu. Between death and living an ignoble life, it chose to live an ignoble life. Murong Yu immediately took control of the Supreme Artifact Spirit. From then on, the Supreme Artifact Spirit belonged to him. The Purple Light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda has a total of 9 floors. Each floor contains the treasures collected by Venerable Tian Luo. From the bottom to the top, the higher the floor, the more precious the treasures are. As for the 9th floor, it is where Tian Luo's remains and his Supreme Saint Godhead are buried. The Supreme Artifact Spirit that Murong Yu had named Tian Luo explained after recognizing Murong Yu as its master. Supreme Saint Godhead? Murong Yu's eyes emitted 2 piercing rays of light. This was a good thing, but on the 9th floor of the Purple Light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda, it was not something that could be casually entered. To enter the 9th floor, one must have the strength of a Venerable Realm Master. Of course, if you have the ability, you don't need to be a Venerable to enter. But no one has ever entered, so Tian Luo did not want to shock Murong Yu, but he still told him the truth. Murong Yu, on the other hand, didn't seem to mind. After all, even if he obtained the Supreme Saint Godhead, it was useless. The people around him, including himself, were unable to refine the Supreme Saint Godhead. They would be crushed to dust before they could even get close to the Supreme Saint Godhead. Moreover, as long as the Purple Light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda was in his hands, he was not afraid of Venerable Tian Luo's Saint Godhead flying away. It was his after all. On the contrary, he was quite interested in the treasures on the other 8 floors. The Purple Light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda is Venerable Tian Luo's life Saint artifact. It has been with him since he entered the true Saint realm. As Venerable Tian Luo's strength continued to grow, he used various precious materials to refine the Purple Light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda, allowing it to grow continuously. In the end, when Venerable Tian Luo broke through to the Venerable Realm, the purple light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda also grew successfully, transforming into a supreme artifact. In other words, the purple light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda is a growth-type saint artifact. Tian Luo continued his introduction. A smile flashed across Murong Yu's face. A growth-type saint artifact was extremely rare. Among the countless saint artifacts in the Ganges River, there were only a few that could grow. Therefore, from the first floor to the ninth floor, they correspond to the true saint realm, great saint realm, undying realm, venerable realm. Every floor contains a large amount of treasures that Venerable Tian Luo had collected in the past. However, the bottom 3 floors have been opened by the Daybreak Divine Sex people, and the treasures inside have been emptied. Master, you can enter these 3 floors now. With a thought, Murong Yu disappeared from the spot in a flicker. When he reappeared, he was already in a spacious space. It was 10 billion li wide. Because he had already subdued the supreme artifact spirit, Murong Yu already knew the size of this space with a thought. With a thought, his vast divine sense could cover the entire space. Just as Tian Luo said, there was nothing here. Then, Murong Yu took a step forward and appeared on the 2nd floor of the purple light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda. It was 100 billion li wide. It was 10 times the size of the 1st floor. However, it was the same as the 1st floor. There was nothing here. It was just empty. Just as Murong Yu expected, the 3rd floor was 1 trillion li wide, but it was still empty. As for the 4th floor, although Murong Yu had already discovered the entrance to the 4th floor, he could not enter it. Tian Luo, can one enter the 4th floor after reaching the undead realm? Murong Yu asked. In theory, it is so. However, the purple light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda is heavily damaged and has yet to be repaired. Even if one reaches the profound sage realm, one cannot enter the 4th floor. Otherwise, the Daybreak Divine Sect would have already emptied the first 8 floors. If one wants to enter these spaces, apart from reaching the corresponding realm, one must also repair the purple light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda. How do you repair it? Murong Yu nodded and asked again. The Daybreak Divine Sect's method is to use the soul, essence, and spirit of experts to nourish it. Although this method takes the longest time, it is the most economical. Otherwise, the purple light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda could devour a large amount of precious heavenly treasures, and so on. Tian Luo explained, but he was somewhat depressed. If it had devoured enough precious materials, it would have already recovered. This way, Murong Yu was somewhat helpless. He was already a big devourer, and now there was another supreme weapon to compete with him. This would make his future path even more difficult. However, if the good things in the purple light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda were worth that much, he could repair it first. Then, he could devour the treasures in the purple light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda to increase his cultivation. Moreover, apart from his own use, he could also provide the various treasures in the supreme weapon to Shenzhen. After all, the large amount of treasures that Tian Luo mentioned was definitely large amount. What does the 4th floor usually have? A large amount of top-grade sacred tools, or materials of the same grade as top-grade sacred tools, medicinal herbs, and elixirs. Murong Yu nodded his head. What stage do I need to repair it to before I can open the 4th floor? I have divided the damage of the supreme weapon into 9 stages. The first stage corresponds to the 1st floor, and the second stage corresponds to the 2nd floor. Every time a stage is repaired, you can enter the corresponding floor. As for the 4th stage, half of it has already been repaired. As long as the other half is repaired, the 4th floor can be opened. Good. This time in the Holy Tomb, I will try to repair the 4th, 5th, and even 6th stages of the supreme weapon. Murong Yu's eyes flickered as he exited the purple light Heavenly Rhoda Pagoda. Seeing Murong Yu walk out with a face full of smiles, the little lowly hurriedly asked curiously, "Big scoundrel, how is it?" "It's still all right, but the damage is too heavy. However, even if I use it to smash someone, its power would not be inferior to your giant axe," Murong Yu said with a smile. Even if it was a heavily damaged supreme weapon, its power was definitely not bad. Morong was confident that he could smash a profound sage to death with a single pagoda, and as long as he took out the purple light heavenly rhoda pagoda, even if he faced a profound sage, he wouldn't be in such a difficult situation. In that case, let's go back to the holy tomb and snatch the treasures. However, you have seized the heavenly dawn divine sect's magical treasure, so be careful of their revenge. The little lowly said excitedly, her face somewhat flushed. The purple light heavenly rhoda pagoda wasn't theirs to begin with. If they dare to come, then kill them all. When I have the strength, I will directly raise the heavenly dawn divine sect to the ground. Morong's eyes flashed with a cold light. Then his figure flashed and disappeared from the divine realm. Chapter 1379. Holy World, first layer of the Holy Tomb. Countless people gathered at the place where Morong had disappeared, which was also the place where the supreme artifact had appeared. Because the aura of the supreme artifact was too strong here, everyone who sensed the appearance of the supreme artifact had gathered here. However, they didn't find the supreme artifact, and they didn't even see the appearance of Morong and the others. They only vaguely knew that Morong and the other two were there. They didn't know if some powerhouse had covered up all of this, or if the supreme artifact had covered it up. Morong didn't know anything about this. Therefore, when Morong appeared in the first layer of the Holy Tomb, he was shocked. He didn't dare to immediately leave the Hichu Luo Shu. If he appeared out of thin air, he was afraid that he would be taken down by those powerhouses before he could even set foot on the ground. After all, this was the Holy Tomb, not some illusory environment. How could he appear out of thin air? So many powerhouses. Morong cautiously probed with his divine sense, and what he saw was a burst of dazzling light that soared into the sky. Waves of incomparably powerful energy surged over like raging waves. If one wasn't strong enough, they wouldn't be able to stand here. Although those powerhouses had suppressed their realms, the aura they unintentionally emitted wasn't something that ordinary sages could withstand. Moreover, there were many powerhouses here. With so many incomparably powerful forces gathered together, people below the profound sage realm would find it difficult to withstand. Therefore, Morong only saw powerhouses at the profound sage realm or above. With a thought, the He-Tu and the Luo tomes appeared outside the saint's tomb. Morong stepped out from the world of the He-Tu and the Luo tomes, then soared into the sky and flew towards the saint's tomb. Big scoundrel, the people of the heavenly light divine sect are here. After the little lowly came out, she seemed to have received some information and whispered to Morong. If they're here, then so be it. Do you think I'm afraid of them? Morong said indifferently. With his strength, as long as he wasn't ambushed by the other party's experts, he really wasn't afraid of Daybreak God Sect. Where are we going? Seeing that Morong didn't care, the little lowly didn't have anything to worry about. Someone asked after a while, go above the second floor. The first floor no longer has anything to do with us, Morong said indifferently. The treasures and even the ferocious beasts on the first floor of the Holy Tomb had all been killed, so there was nothing to be gained here. However, it was probably the same on the second floor. Moreover, there were too many experts on the first floor. If he was careless and was discovered, Morong might not even have the chance to escape. Thus, the two of them shot toward the entrance of the second floor without any pause. Suddenly, Morong's heart skipped a beat and he asked, Hichu, Tian Luo, do you think the saint's tomb could be a supreme artifact? Just like the heavenly purple flame pagoda? The Saint Tomb was the same as the Purple Fire Heavenly Sieve Pagoda. They both had 9 floors. The higher one went, the higher the grade of the treasures and the stronger the beasts. Moreover, that sovereign seemed to be buried on the 9th floor of the Saint Tomb. There were too many similarities. That's possible, but we haven't found this supreme artifact yet, Tian Luo said in a low voice. If the Saint Tomb transformed into this Saint Tomb and did not reveal its aura, it would be difficult for ordinary people to detect it. Some powerful saint artifacts even formed their own world. The people inside did not know that they were living in the Saint artifact and thought that it was a real world. There are many people at the entrance of the second floor. Although the first floor of the Holy Tomb was huge, it was nothing compared to Muronyu and the little lowly Speed. Thus, they quickly arrived at the entrance of the second floor. However, there were many fierce-looking people at the entrance of the second floor. Although there was no need to pay any fees, everyone who passed by would be interrogated. Of course, this was excluding the experts. Stop right there. Seeing that Muronyu and the little lowly were about to enter the entrance of the second floor, a burly man shouted and stepped in front of Muronyu. He looked down at Muronyu with a questioning gaze. Ha ha! Just as Muronyu's expression changed slightly, the burly man burst into laughter. Muronyu was baffled by his laughter. Little bastard, I've been waiting for you. Don't resist. The burly man roared and grabbed at Muronyu with his fan-sized hand. It was so powerful that even the void was shattered. Muronyu only saw a flash in front of his eyes before the burly man's hand grabbed at him. This was because the burly man was a profound sage powerhouse. He was 2 realms higher than Muronyu. Muronyu's face suddenly became gloomy, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Who are you? Muronyu took a step back and smashed through the void, avoiding the burly man's attack. Little bastard, you do have some strength. No wonder you were able to kill the young lord. However, you'd better surrender in front of me. Otherwise, when I capture you, I'll make you beg for death. The burly man grinned and took another step forward, attacking Muronyu. Young lord? So you're from the Blue Thunder Divine Church. Muronyu immediately reacted. Your young lord deserved to die. Retreat immediately, or I'll kill you too. The burly man grinned. Little bastard, you want to kill me? What a dream. Hee, as long as I capture you, the young lord will definitely reward me with a lot of resources. At that time, I'll have a chance to reach the ancient sage realm. While speaking, the burly man attacked Muronyu again and again. You're courting death. Muronyu was angry. The reason why he had been restraining himself was that he didn't want to attract the attention of others. But now, it seemed that he couldn't do that. The burly man and the other people of the Blue Thunder Divine Church were determined to kill him. Let's try the purple light heavenly rhoda I just got. Muronyu sneered in his heart. He grabbed the air, and a small tower with purple light appeared in his hand. It was the purple light heavenly rhoda. Kill! After the purple light heavenly rhoda appeared, Muronyu roared in his heart and threw out the purple light heavenly rhoda. Whoosh! The purple light heavenly rhoda expanded in the wind and instantly became the size of a small mountain. Then, with a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth, it smashed through the void and pressed down fiercely. At the same time, Muronyu poured a huge amount of power into the purple light heavenly rhoda. Boom! The purple light heavenly roar tower shook violently at first, and then exploded with purple light and 5-colored light that soared into the sky. Damn it! Muronyu's heart abruptly sank when he saw the dazzling multicolored light soaring into the sky, and he cried out in alarm. When the purple light and 5-colored light burst out, the burly man and the people around him also felt their hearts sink. An extremely strong aura of death instantly enveloped their hearts, suppressing their souls to the point that they felt like they were about to shatter. What a terrifying aura. Is this the Chaos Ancestral Artifact? The burly man was shocked and looked at the purple light heavenly rhoda. However, other than the purple light that filled the sky and the heavenly purple light measuring tower, he couldn't see what the heavenly purple light measuring tower looked like. Run. This was their first thought, and, at the same time, their first reaction was to do the same. They turned around and ran. However, the power of the supreme artifact had been activated. How could they run away? The purple light heavenly rhoda shattered the void with a terrifying aura. When the burly man and the others turned around, it had already enveloped them and pressed down fiercely. Puff! At the same time, dozens of experts at the entrance of the second floor were directly shattered into pieces. Even their souls were obliterated. The power of a supreme artifact was overbearing and terrifying. However, although the supreme artifact was violent, its aura was also very terrifying. When the burly man and the others were killed, the unique five-colored holy light and aura of the supreme artifact had already flooded the first floor of the Saint Tomb. Then, it permeated the second floor and the outside of the Saint Tomb. The aura of a supreme artifact. It's the divine artifact that appeared before. Many experts on the first floor of the Saint Tomb immediately reacted. Suddenly, powerful divine thoughts tore through time and space and shot toward the entrance of the second floor. Some of the people with faster reactions had already rushed over at the same time as their spiritual sense was released. Oh no, we've poked a hornet's nest. Murong Yu's face changed dramatically, and he put the purple light heavenly rhoda back into his body. After thinking about it, he felt that it wasn't safe enough, so he put the purple light heavenly rhoda back into the Hichu Luo Shu. Whoosh! Murong Yu appeared at the entrance of the second floor. At a glance, there were dozens of people guarding the entrance of the second floor. He didn't know if they were also from the Green Thunder Divine Sect. Murong Yu didn't stop. He took out a chaotic Saint Vein and directly refined it, replenishing the power that the purple light heavenly rhoda had just devoured. Then, he spread his demon wings and soared into the sky, flying toward the distance. As soon as Murong Yu left, the experts who were alarmed by the purple light heavenly rhoda rushed into the second floor. An enormous divine thought shrouded the entire second floor of the Saint Tomb, but there was no trace of Murong Yu. One by one, the experts rushed over and began to search the first, second, and even third floors. However, there was still no trace of Murong Yu. Tracing back to the origin, one by one, the divine abilities were displayed. So the scene of Murong Yu killing the burly man appeared in front of them again. However, what made them speechless was that Murong Yu's appearance was even more blurred than before. However, they also confirmed that Murong Yu was the same person they had seen before. At this time, Murong Yu had returned to the Hichu Luo Shu. In fact, he had already entered the second floor after flying a distance away. Otherwise, he would have been discovered. At that time, even if the disciples of the true martial temple were exposed, he would be killed. After all, there were not only the human clan and the Saint Tomb, but also the demon clan and the divine clan. Although the supreme artifact is powerful, it devoured all of my power in an instant. If the supreme weapon can't kill the opponent in one fell swoop, then I'll be the one to die. Moreover, the five-colored saint light of the supreme weapon is too eye-catching. Once I use it, I'll be tracked. It's okay to use it once in a while, but if I use it too many times, my identity will inevitably be discovered. Murong Yu pondered with a gloomy face. Chapter 1380. Hichu, Tianluo, can't you hide the five-colored radiance when you use the supreme weapon? Murong Yu asked Hichu and Tianluo in confusion. A supreme weapon is different from ordinary sacred weapons. Whenever it's activated, it will release a unique five-colored radiance. However, this can be controlled. Although you've successfully activated the supreme weapon's power, it can't be considered as fully activated. If the supreme weapon's true power is released, the first level of the Saint Tomb will be razed to the ground in an instant. If the supreme weapon's power is activated, it can even raise a holy empire in an instant. Your strength is still too weak. You can't fully activate the supreme weapon's power. Therefore, you can't control the five-colored radiance released by the supreme weapon. Only when you can truly control the power of the supreme weapon can you control the five-colored light that it emits and even its powerful aura. Hichu explained slowly. Murong Yu was speechless. If he couldn't control the five-colored radiance and its powerful aura, then he would become a target every time he used it, attracting everyone's attention. What made him even more speechless was that the supreme weapon's devouring power was too terrifying. In an instant, it had devoured all of his strength. Even the Tree of Life couldn't recover quickly. Looks like I can't use the supreme weapon in the future. I can only use it when I'm in danger. Murong Yu was a little depressed. Anyone who had such a powerful supreme weapon would be depressed if they were told they couldn't use it. The Supreme Weapon's aura had appeared on the first level of the Saint Tomb twice in a row, attracting many experts. However, they didn't know who had the Supreme Weapon. At this moment, Muronyu had already walked out of the Hichu Luo Shu and headed towards the entrance of the third level. Like the purple light Heavenly Civ Tower, the Saint Tomb also had 9 levels. Each level corresponded to the Saint, Great Saint, and even the Supreme Realm. Muronyu didn't know if there were any Supreme Realm beasts on the 9th level, but he knew that there were many beasts on each level. However, the Saint Tomb was still a Saint Tomb. No matter how many ferocious beasts there was still a limit. After a large number of saints entered, the beasts on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and even the 4th level of the Saint Tomb were completely wiped out. At the same time, there were also all kinds of eruptions that had been plundered clean. Muronyu's previous encounter with the birth of a sacred tool was simply a miracle. Just like the entrance to the 2nd floor, the entrance to the 3rd floor was also guarded by people from the Green Thunder sect. There weren't too many experts guarding this level, but their cultivation realm was extremely high, reaching Ancient Sage. Right now, Muronyu is being obstructed by an Ancient Sage from the Green Lightning Divine sect. Kid, kill yourself. The Ancient Saint from the Green Lightning Divine sect was a sinister-looking old man. He was currently looking at Muronyu with a gaze akin to a venomous snake. That cold voice made people feel a chill in their souls. Muronyu looked at him calmly with a gloomy face. Previously, he had thought of going in from here, but it was impossible. That was because the old man's divine consciousness had covered the entire entrance. Although Muronyu was gloomy, he didn't disappear. Therefore, he was discovered by the old man as soon as he approached the entrance to the 3rd floor. Immediately, the old man struck out with his palm and sent Muronyu flying. At this moment, his divine consciousness had locked onto Muronyu, giving Muronyu great pressure. Kill! Muronyu suddenly roared as a top-grade saint artifact appeared in his hand. He pushed it to the limit, causing it to erupt with a terrifying aura that could destroy the heavens and earth. It tore through the void and slashed toward the old man. A disdainful smile flashed across the old man's face as he sneered. He suddenly grabbed the air with his big hand. Bang! A large part of the void couldn't withstand the old man's attack and shattered. A frightening aura that could destroy the heavens and earth erupted, enveloping Muronyu and rapidly smashing down on him. Muronyu's face changed slightly. His slash might not be able to injure the old man, but the old man's claw could very likely crush him. Once his physical body was crushed, his soul would be suppressed. Soul-devouring slash. Muronyu roared in his heart. His soul power went berserk and formed an extremely violent saber that immediately slashed at the old man's soul. You're a soul saint? When Muronyu's soul power rushed into the old man's soul space, the old man immediately discovered it. Immediately, he mobilized a large amount of energy into his soul space to protect his soul. At the same time, he attacked Muronyu's soul power. Muronyu's soul power was still a little weak. The moment the two sides collided, Muronyu's soul power began to collapse rapidly. In less than a breath's time, Muronyu's soul-devouring slash had been broken. However, Muronyu didn't expect to kill the old man with a single slash. He only did this to stall for time. Therefore, in the time that the old man destroyed the soul-devouring slash, he had already retreated rapidly. Space travel. After retreating rapidly, Muronyu smashed through the void and quickly traveled through the void. Muronyu was still quite confident in his speed. Little bastard, you dare to compete with me in speed? Don't you know that I'm best at speed? Seeing Muronyu quickly escape, the old man could not help but sneer. Then, he took a step forward and disappeared into the void. Muronyu, who was traveling through the void, felt an extremely strong aura behind him tearing through the void and quickly approaching him. The old man's speed was definitely faster than an ordinary Saint King. He was definitely faster than Muronyu. He believed that it would not take long for him to catch up with Muronyu. Moreover, during this process, the old man constantly blasted out terrifying power across the void, shattering the void and collapsing the sky. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Murong could only use the Hichu Luo Shu and the Yin Cauldron to protect himself. Even so, he was still shaken to the point that his qi and blood churned, and his speed became increasingly slower. Moreover, due to the instability of the space, he could not even enter the Hichu Luo Shu. Power of time. Murong had no choice but to use the power of time to reverse the space-time of the void behind him. With a poof, the old man did not know that the space-time in front of him had been reversed and crashed into it. Therefore, he charged into the alternate space-time. However, he was very powerful, and the space-time that Murong had reversed was not far away. He only needed to shake it violently to shatter it. Then, he walked out of the alternate space-time. However, when he returned to the current space-time, Murong had already disappeared. Although it was only for a moment, it was enough for Murong to enter the Hichu Luo Shu. Little bastard, the second level of the Saint Tomb will be your burial ground. The old man growled with a sinister expression. He was extremely furious. After all, he was a prime saint, but he could not even kill an undead saint. He could not even catch up with him. How could he not be angry? Did he feel humiliated? However, in spite of his anger, he still spread the news that Murong had appeared on the second level of the Saint Tomb. Not long after, everyone in the Green Thunder Divine sect in the Saint Tomb knew about it. A few Saint Kings were stationed at the entrances to the second and third floors of the Saint Tomb. In this way, Murong could not leave the second level of the Saint Tomb. The others began to search the entire second level. With the Green Thunder Divine sect strength, they believed that they would soon find Murong. Of course, this was only the Green Thunder Divine sect's opinion. They did not know that Murong had the heaven-defying treasure Hichu Luo Shu, which could teleport him out of the Saint Tomb at will. Now, Murong was a little worried. Although he could kill profound sage-level sages with his undead realm cultivation, he was still too weak. He could not do anything to the experts of the Green Thunder Divine sect, and could only run away. Although it was a skill to be able to escape from a prime saint, Murong did not want to run away. What he wanted was to kill every single one of them that came, and kill every single pair that came, to improve his realm and strength. I wonder if 2 Peerless Saint artifacts can help me reach the undead realm. Murong frowned slightly. When he reached the peak of the 8th rank, he used a total of 80 Peerless Saint artifacts. If he wanted to improve his attack to the 9th rank of the undead realm, he would need at least 100 Peerless Saint artifacts. This was only the most ideal estimate. Moreover, if he wanted to reach the undead realm from the undead realm, he would need to refine a Peerless Saint artifact. However, would a single Peerless Saint artifact be enough for him to reach the undead realm from the peak of the 9th rank of the undead realm? Murong felt a little uncertain. Because of this, he did not immediately refine the 2 Peerless Saint artifacts even though he now had them. He wanted to use them to break through to the undead realm. Heavenly King, after you devour the 2 Peerless Saint artifacts, will you be able to restore the 4th stage? Murong suddenly asked. No. Heavenly King's answer was very straightforward. Murong was not disappointed. If it was so easy, the Heavenly Light Divine sect would have already restored the Purple Light Heavenly Pagoda. How could it be his turn? I heard that there is an undead valley in the 4th level of the Saint Tomb, where a large number of undead have appeared. The attacks of those undead are not powerful, but their soul attacks are very terrifying. They specialize in devouring the souls of saints. Right at this time, Murong suddenly heard the conversation of several saints flying by. Immediately, Murong's heart moved. Undead that devour souls? Those undead want to devour souls? Could they be souls? If that's the case, then wouldn't I be able to devour those souls? Murong's eyes suddenly emitted a strong light. I heard that those undead devour souls to cultivate. They have a set of soul cultivation techniques. Right now, many people are rushing to the Undead Valley. They all want to obtain the soul cultivation techniques from the undead. Those people continued to discuss. Chapter 1381. He needed to refine a large amount of power to make a breakthrough in cultivation. so did the breakthrough in the soul realm. However, Morongyu didn't have enough divine weapons, treasures, and other items with huge power to refine, so his realm had been stagnant and could not be improved. However, if the undead creatures in the undead valley were truly souls, then Morongyu would be able to devour them to cultivate. Now Morongyu had to figure out how to sneak into the 4th floor of the Saint Tomb. It was not hard to imagine that the Green Thunder sect must have stationed experts at the entrance of the 4th floor. What Morongyu didn't know was that this was the original arrangement of the Green Thunder sect. However, since the news of his appearance on the 2nd floor spread out, all the people of the Green Thunder sect entered the 2nd floor. Now, there were not many people on the 1st and 2nd floors, except for a few people of the Green Thunder sect. Attach to their bodies and follow them to the 3rd or 4th floor. Morongyu thought of this method. So, Hichu Luoshu's words made an invisible particle rush to the saints of the immortal realm. Morongyu was much stronger than them, and the Hitu and the Luo tomes didn't cause much of a commotion. Therefore, they had no idea that the Hitu and the Luo tomes had already attached themselves to their bodies. Because there were no fierce beasts or treasures on the 2nd floor, these saints of the immortal realm came to the entrance of the 3rd floor without any obstruction. However, before they got close to the entrance of the 3rd floor, they were stopped by the people of the Green Thunder sect. Morongyu, who was attached to their bodies, was surprised, because he found that there were many more experts at the entrance than before. Some of them had even reached the Saint King realm. Although Morongyu couldn't see their specific realms, he had seen experts of the Saint King realm before, and the power they exuded was similar. Open your mind and storage ring, and let us check it. A disciple of the Green Thunder sect came up and shouted at the experts of the immortal realm who were attached to Morongyu. These undead realm powerhouses were startled, and then they became angry. Based on what? It's not like the holy tomb belongs to you. How dare you? The disciple who spoke was in the eternal realm. His expression changed when he heard this. Then, he took a step forward and rushed in front of the undying saint who had spoken. At the same time, he threw out a punch. Feeling the extremely strong killing intent and death aura, the immortal stage saint who was attacked was immediately horrified. He immediately retreated. However, how great was the gap between the undead stage and the undead stage? It was so big that the undying realm saint only had the thought of retreating when the undying realm expert's fist had already landed on his body. The undying saints suddenly felt a terrifying power that could destroy the world explode in their bodies. In the next moment, he felt his body explode violently, turning into a cloud of bloody mist that scattered into the surroundings. Then, he blacked out and lost consciousness. An undying saint dares to blabber? You're simply courting death. Do you want us to examine you, or send you on your way? The disciple who had killed the undying saint licked his lips and looked at the remaining undying saints. The 3 undying saints were so frightened that their faces turned ashen. Their eyes flickered with fear. After hearing the disciple's words, one of the undying saints sneered. Green Thunder sect? Do you know who we are? I don't care who you are. Let us examine you or die. The Eternal Realm disciple of the Green Thunder sect sneered impatiently. We're from the Heavenly Light sect. You dare to kill the disciples of our Tianming God sect? Your Green Thunder God sect is dead. Our Daybreak Divine sect will definitely annihilate you. An undead stage saint sneered with a ferocious expression. Heavenly Light sect and Green Thunder sect? Morongyu and the Hichu Luoshu almost burst out laughing. These 2 forces were his enemies. Now, they were in conflict. Was this a dog-eat-dog situation? If the Heavenly Light sect really pursues this matter, the Green Thunder sect will definitely be destroyed. Morongyu sneered in his heart. The Green Thunder sect was powerful, but they didn't have a primal chaos ancestor saint. However, the Heavenly Light sect was different. Their strength was infinitely close to a sacred ground. They only needed to send a few primal chaos ancestor saints to destroy the Green Thunder sect. As Morongyu had expected, the faces of the Green Thunder Divine cult's disciples changed when they heard the words of the Daybreak Divine sect's disciples. Even the Saint Ruler was the same. Don't even think about killing us. I've already sent this matter out. Your appearances have already been seen by the experts of our Tianming God sect. If you want to live, kneel down and kowtow immediately. Perhaps we'll let you go. Otherwise, you'll definitely die. As he spoke, the few disciples of Tianming God sect waved their hands, and a Tianming God sect disciple token appeared in their hands. It was indeed a Heavenly Light sect disciple token. The people of the Green Thunder Divine sect changed their expressions again, and their faces darkened. They stared at the Heavenly Light sect disciples with murderous intent. Are you afraid now? Quickly kneel down and kowtow to me. Give me all your storage rings and treasures, and I might ask the sect to spare your lives. Otherwise, kill yourselves. You'll die sooner or later. Seeing the Green Thunder sect disciples' expressions change, the Heavenly Light sect disciples became even more smug. In the Hichu Luoshu, Muronyu was speechless and wanted to laugh. Why did the words of the Heavenly Light sect disciples sound so familiar? It seemed that many people had said the same thing to him many times. Moreover, those people who dared to say it to him were almost all killed by him. These idiots are actually talking about these people. Aren't they just forcing the Azure Lightning Divine sect to talk about them? Muronyu sneered in his heart as he looked down on those brainless disciples of the Daybreak Divine sect. Kill them all. Sure enough, as soon as Murongyu's thought appeared, the Green Thunder sect's Saint King spoke eerily. Suddenly, many people from the Green Thunder sect attacked at the same time. Terrifying forces tore through the void and covered the sky, fiercely tearing at the Heavenly Light sect disciples. How dare you kill? The Heavenly Light sect disciples' expressions changed, and they were about to roar. However, the Green Thunder sect disciples were much stronger than them. Moreover, they attacked suddenly. Their speed was so fast that the Heavenly Light sect disciples were killed before they could finish their words. Then, Muronyu tragically found that the Hichu Luoshu was floating in the void again. Without the person possessing him, he couldn't enter the entrance again. Clean up the scene and erase all traces. Quickly leave here and let others guard this place. The Saint King Realm Great Elder of the Green Thunder sect said in a low voice and began to erase the aura. Soon, they cleaned up everything and quickly left. Muronyu breathed a sigh of relief and controlled the Hichu Luoshu to enter the entrance of the third floor. After Muronyu left, two groups of people flew over. Naturally, they were from the Heavenly Light sect and the Green Thunder sect. As for whether a battle would break out between them, and whether the Heavenly Light sect would wipe out the Green Thunder sect, Muronyu didn't know, and he wasn't interested in finding out. After entering the third floor, Muronyu discovered that the exit wasn't guarded by anyone from the Blue Lightning Divine Church. After thinking about it, Muronyu understood. Thus, he and the little lowly left the Hitu and the Luoshu and directly passed through the void, shooting towards the entrance of the fourth level. There were many undead realm fierce beasts on the third floor, and a small number of imperishable realm fierce beasts. However, the space on the third floor was about 10 times larger than that on the second floor. Therefore, the fierce beasts here weren't completely wiped out. Along the way, Muronyu encountered quite a few ferocious beasts. However, Muronyu had no interest in these fierce beasts and directly flew over their heads or beside them. These fierce beasts didn't even have time to react before Muronyu and Little Loli disappeared. Then, these fierce beasts thought that it was just an illusion. Flying all the way, the two of them soon arrived at the fourth floor. Here, Muronyu and Little Loli slowed down. One was because Little Loli didn't know the location of the Undead Valley. The other was that this place was filled with a large number of imperishable realm and profound sage realm fierce beasts. Both Muronyu and Little Loli were undead realm sages, especially Muronyu, who suppressed his realm to the 4th stage of the undead realm. If they walked in scrupulously on the 4th floor with their strength, they would definitely cause a lot of trouble. Bang! Little Loli used her axe to split the profound sage realm fierce beast whose soul had been destroyed by Muronyu into 2 halves. Then, She looked at Murong with some dissatisfaction. Big scoundrel, why don't we directly travel through the void? Moreover, we have to be constantly harassed by these fierce beasts. Do you know where the Undead Valley is? If we go straight in, then it won't only be these fierce beasts that will harass us, but also various powerhouses. Murong explained. Let's just kill them all. Little Loli rolled her eyes and fiercely chopped down with a huge axe in her hand. Bang! A tall mountain in front of them was directly smashed into pieces by little Loli. Aya! A scream came from the shattered mountain, and then a figure shot out from the dust, straight into the ninth heaven. Audacious thief! You actually dared to secretly follow us. You're really tired of living. Little Loli shouted and stomped on the ground, wanting to soar into the sky and attack the other party. However, Murong stopped her. You're not his match. Murong looked at the young man flapping his wings in the sky and narrowed his eyes. Angel Race. Chapter 1382. The Angel Race was one of the holy clans in the Holy World. They were extremely powerful and were on par with the Phoenix Race and the Dragon Race. Moreover, the Angel Race was different from the Phoenix Race and the Dragon Race. The Phoenix Race and the Dragon Race were powerful, but relatively speaking, they had fewer clansmen. However, the Angel Race had a lot of clansmen. Furthermore, as long as they were angels, they were favored by the space. Their wings were innately capable of flight. This was true even in no-fly zones. In addition, they were very sensitive to auras and were naturally good at tracking and counter-tracking. Moreover, some people with heaven-defying talent could directly travel through the void. In addition to being good at space, the strength of the angel race was also extremely terrifying. Compared to the human race, the angel race's powerhouses were usually stronger than the human race's powerhouses in the same realm. There wasn't much difference between the angel race and the human race, but apart from their flashy wings. Every angel race member would have a pair of wings after being born. As their strength increased, their wings would also increase. 2-winged angels were at the Sage Realm, 4-winged angels were at the Great Sage Realm, and so on. The Primal Chaos Ancestor Sage's angel race had a total of 18 wings. In other words, there were 9 pairs. The angel race's wings carried traces of light. When they flapped, streams of light would circulate around their wings. From afar, they looked extremely gorgeous and flashy. Moreover, like the Phoenix race, the angel race had handsome men and beautiful women. At this time, not far above Murong group, the angel race member flapped his 5 pairs of wings and looked at Murong group in surprise. 5 pairs of wings, a 10-winged angel race member in the profound Sage Realm. The angel race's wings were definitely their strength. Among all the races in the Holy World, this was the easiest way to distinguish their strength. Moreover, the angel race members couldn't retract their wings because after retracting them, their strength would instantly plummet. Furthermore, as a member of the angel tribe, wings were the most sacred to them. Taking them back was definitely an act of humiliation. You can actually discover me? How interesting. The angel race member looked at Murong group in surprise and then said, the angels were very good at spatial concealment. With this angel's strength, if he hid himself, even ancient sages or saint kings would have a hard time finding him. In fact, he didn't know that Murong and the little Loli both had a deep understanding of space. This was especially so for Murong, who had comprehended the laws of space. His understanding of space was above that of many angels. Moreover, Murong had already discovered this angel long ago. He had just pretended not to see her. However, in the end, the little Loli could not help but slash out with her axe. It was fine if he didn't know that the other party was following him all the time. Anyone would be unhappy if they found out. Who are you? Why are you following us? The little Loli stared at the wings of the profound sage of the angel race, and a trace of danger flashed in her eyes. The angel felt a chill in his heart. The little Loli was looking at his wings as if she wanted to chop them off. He shuddered as he stared at the little Loli and asked, "What do you want to do? Have you heard of an angel with broken wings?" The little lowly suddenly smiled. Before her voice fell, she had already disappeared and turned into a stream of light, rushing toward the profound sage of the angel race. Whoosh! The profound sage of the angel race was startled and immediately retreated. His 10 wings flapped again and again, instantly smashing through the void and shuttling through it. The little lowly coldly snorted and also smashed through the void, quickly chasing after the profound sage of the angel race. Murong Yu was helpless and could only smash through the void to chase after her. However, he did not make a move and just followed behind the little lowly, watching with interest. Wah, little lowly, why are you so violent? You dare to cut off my sacred wings. The profound sage of the angel race cried out strangely and quickly retreated. The little lowly was very unhappy, and she pushed her speed to the limit and chased after him. However, there was a huge gap between her speed and the 10-winged angels, and she could not close the distance at all. If the profound sage of the angel race had not maintained his speed, he might have already gotten rid of the little lowly. Of course, it was not that the little lowly's speed was not good enough. The little lowly's speed was already very fast, but she was at a disadvantage because of her realm. After all, she was only in the undead realm. If she was also in the profound sage realm, her speed would definitely surpass that of the angel race's profound sage. Little lowly, your speed is not as good as mine. If it is him, there is a slight possibility that he can catch up to me. There is only a slight possibility. The angel powerhouse, who was retreating, suddenly said. He looked at Murong Yu with a strong fighting spirit in his eyes. He wanted to compete with Murong Yu in terms of speed. In fact, the reason he was chasing after Murong Yu and the angel race powerhouse was that he had met Murong Yu and the angel race powerhouse by chance. After seeing the speed of Murong Yu and the angel race powerhouse, his competitive spirit had risen. Therefore, he followed Murong Yu and the angel race powerhouse, wanted to find an opportunity to compete with Murong Yu. However, before he could say anything, he had already been discovered. Now, he had directly started to challenge them. You want to challenge me? Murong Yu stepped forward, grabbed the little lowly, and looked at the angel race profound sage with a smile. The angel race profound sage also stopped and looked at Murong Yu with a face full of fighting spirit. What? Do you dare to compete with me in speed? The smile on Murong Yu's face became more and more brilliant. This was the first person who wanted to compete with him in speed. Although the angel race was good at speed, they were extremely fast. However, Murong Yu was not afraid. The speed of this angel race profound sage should be a bit faster than other angel race powerhouses of the same realm. However, it was only equivalent to the speed of an ordinary high-level profound sage. On the other hand, Murong Yu's speed was far beyond that of ordinary ancient sages. It was even comparable to low-level sage kings. Of course, the ancient sages of the Blue Thunder Divine Church that he had met before were better at speed. However, he was confident that he would be faster than this angel race profound sage. However, why should he compete with the other party? Why should I accept your challenge? Murong Yu shook his head and directly refused. The angel race profound sage looked disappointed, but Murong Yu's next words made his eyes light up. Of course, it's not impossible to compete. However, I never do things that don't benefit me. If you could take out a few sacred artifacts or ancestral artifacts as stakes, I can reluctantly compete with you. The angel race profound sage rolled his eyes. Although he was one of the outstanding disciples of the younger generation of the angel race, how could he have a sacred artifact, let alone an ancestral artifact? Immediately, he said with a black face, I have a peerless sacred artifact. If you win, this peerless sacred artifact is yours. If you lose, forget it. It's normal for you to lose, and I don't want anything. The angel race profound sage raised a long sword in his hand and said to Murong Yu with a face full of confidence. Murong Yu's face was full of bright smiles, and he wasn't angry at being looked down upon by the other party. This peerless sacred artifact is mine after today. While speaking, he had already arrived near the angel race profound sage. How do we compete? It's very simple. The angel race profound sage put the peerless sacred artifact into his storage ring, and then said, "We'll fly in the same direction at the same time." In the process, whoever shakes off the other party wins. Of course, it doesn't have to be shaken off. If the other party admits defeat, it's also a win. Moroni nodded. Very fair. Then let's start now. Thereupon, the two of them made some preparations and turned into streams of light at the same time, shooting toward the stream of light. During this process, four demonic wings appeared on Murong-Yu's back, and under the crazy flapping, his whole body swept across the sky like a stream of light, quickly disappearing into the distant horizon. Demonic wings? You're a member of the fiend race? When he saw the four wings on Murong-Yu's back, the angel race profound sage immediately exclaimed. However, he quickly shook his head and denied his guess. Murong-Yu was in the undead realm. If he was a member of the fiend race, then he should have 6 wings. However, he only had 4 wings at the moment, and his speed was much faster than that of a 4-winged fiend race profound sage. No, these are just the condensed power of the fiend race, not innate fiend race profound sage. Could it be that he's practicing the cultivation techniques of the fiend race? However, the fiend race is a fallen angel race, and their cultivation techniques can't be practiced by other races. Could it be that this human has the bloodline of the fiend race? The angel race and the fiend race were both powerful races of the sacred race. As the angel race profound sage had said, the fiend race was originally a member of the angel race. It was only because they had fallen that they separated from the angel race. The fiend race and the angel race were sworn enemies, and both sides didn't like each other. Under normal circumstances, when the people of both sides met, they wouldn't say anything and would directly fight. This angel race, profound sage, didn't seem to be that kind of person, and he didn't have any prejudice against races. Otherwise, he would have already made a move against Murong-Yu. A human with a fiend race bloodline? Interesting. A hint of curiosity flashed on the angel race profound sage's face. Damn. As he muttered to himself, Murong-Yu's figure was about to disappear from his line of sight. Once he was shaken off, he would lose. Therefore, he chased after Murong-Yu, turning into a white stream of light that quickly chased after him. Xiao! Xiao! 2 streams of light, one black and one white, cut through the void and swept across the sky, quickly disappearing. However, it was obvious that the speed of the white light was much faster than that of the black light. This was because Murong-Yu had only used the fiend race profound sage's fiend race profound sage. If he had directly traveled through the void, your speed is pretty good, comparable to that of an ordinary ancient sage. However, it's still far from my speed. The profound sage of the angel race caught up with Murong-Yu, and after leaving behind this sentence, left Murong-Yu behind. Chapter 1383. Is that so? Looking at the profound sage of the angel race who was about to disappear, Murong-Yu laughed in a low voice. In the next moment, the demon wings on his back disappeared. At the same time, his figure smashed through the void and then rushed into the void, space travel. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Murong-Yu walked through space like a fish in water, with very little resistance. In just a few breaths of time, he had already caught up with the profound sage of the angel race. The profound sage of the angel race was taken aback. He immediately put away his contempt and began to increase his speed with all his strength. But what made him depressed was that while his speed increased, Murong-Yu's speed also increased. Moreover, the speed of increase was even faster than his. Whoosh! Murong-Yu caught up with the profound sage of the angel race, and then with one step, swept past the profound sage of the angel race. With one more step, Murong-Yu would become nothing more than a laughingstock. After that, there was no more after that. Murong-Yu had completely disappeared in front of the profound sage of the angel race. What a fast speed! Seeing Murong-Yu quickly disappear, the angel race powerhouse couldn't help but stop and look in the direction that Murong-Yu had disappeared in. After being shocked the profound sage of the angel race felt a deep sense of frustration. The angel race had always been favored by space, and they were extremely good at speed. Most people of the other races in the same realm were far inferior to them, and he was one of the best in the angel race in the same realm. Even the ancient sages of the angel race were far inferior to him in speed, not to mention the sages of the other races. In Murong, Yu was only in the undead realm. But his speed was too terrifying, and he had directly surpassed him. Even if he has a spatial saint godhead, it's impossible for him to have such a terrifying speed. The profound sage of the angel race was puzzled. A strong sense of frustration deeply frustrated him, and he didn't have the courage to continue chasing Murong Yu. Of course, although his sense of frustration was very strong, and he was unwilling, he didn't feel any hatred for Murong Yu. After all, he was the one who was inferior. "Birdman, why did you stop here?" A pleasant voice, like that of an oriole, echoed in the ears of the profound sage of the angel race. At the same time, the little lowly's figure appeared beside him, smiling at the profound sage of the angel race. The profound sage of the angel race looked at the little lowly with a depressed expression. "He's gone. How am I supposed to chase after him?" "So you admit defeat?" The little lowly was still smiling. The angel profound sage nodded. He was not a sore loser. A loss was a loss, and he would not deny it. Now, as long as he waited for Murong Yu to come back, he would hand over the bet to Murong Yu. Therefore, the little lowly sent a message to Murong Yu. After a while, Murong Yu returned. Therefore, the profound sage of the angel race gave the peerless sacred artifact to Murong Yu. Murong Yu received the peerless sacred artifact with a smile on his face and stored it in the Hichu Luo Shu. Then he smiled at the profound sage of the angel race and said, "Do you want to compete? Do you want to win back the bet?" Murong Yu now had 3 peerless sacred artifacts, but he still didn't dare to directly break through to the undead realm. If he had 4, he could try to break through to the next realm. Therefore, he asked this question. The profound sage of the angel race's face immediately darkened. "I would only compete with you if I was a fool. Wouldn't I be abused if I competed with you? You're a fool." At this time, a sneer was heard. Then, Murong Yu and the others saw a shadow shooting over from the distance. The shadow quickly enlarged, and it didn't take long for it to arrive in front of Murong Yu and the others. It was a 10-winged male of the fiend race. The fiend race was similar to the angel race, and the number of wings corresponded to the same realm. However, the wings of the angel race were white. On the other hand, the wings of the fiend race were black as ink. As they flickered, streams of black light constantly circulated between the wings. Although they weren't as flashy as the angel races, they were still very handsome, just like Murong Yu's fiend wings. "Xianhua, you actually call me a fool?" The profound sage of the angel race fiercely jumped up and looked at the profound sage of the fiend race, who was Xianhua, with murderous intent. Xianhua laughed, not afraid of the other party at all. "Yang Hao, are you not a fool? Alas, you really don't have a good memory. Every time we meet, I have to remind you that you are a fool. You make me feel embarrassed." Xianhua looked at Murong Yu and the little lowly, but his mouth was mocking Yang Hao, the profound sage of the angel race. "Your uncle, you are the fool. Your whole family are fools." Yang Hao flew into a rage and cursed at Xianhua. Xianhua looked at Murong Yu with a helpless expression. "Brother, you have to forgive me. This fool of the angel race is not only a fool, but he also has no manners." Yang Hao became even angrier, and he looked at Xianhua with murderous intent. "Xianhua, I want to duel with you. Come on, who is afraid of who? It's just that. Are you my opponent?" The last time we fought, we seem to have fought for half a year without a victor being decided. In the end, I almost died of exhaustion. It would be good if you really have the confidence to win against me." Murong Yu looked at the 2 enemies with a smile on his face. The angel race and the fiend race were enemies, and when they saw each other, they couldn't wait to fight to the death. Although the 2 in front of him were unforgiving and mocking each other, they didn't have any killing intent or hostility. The two should belong to the type of quarrelsome lovers. Yang Hao was silent. Xian Hua was telling the truth. Their strength was on par, and if they fought to the death, they could determine the victor. However, it was very likely that both sides would suffer. They weren't mortal enemies, so they couldn't fight to the death. Therefore, every duel was tiring, and in the end, there was no victor. After a moment of silence, Yang Hao smiled. This brother is very fast. Xian Hua, haven't you always wanted to defeat me? If you can beat him, then I will naturally lose. How about it? Hearing Yang Hao's words, Murong was overjoyed. He couldn't wait to pat Yang Hao on the shoulder and tell him that he knew how to behave. Xian Hua immediately looked at Murong full of fighting spirit. Brother, your speed is not bad. You easily defeated Yang Hao. Usually when I fought with that guy, I was afraid of hurting his self-esteem, so I always let him win. However, today, I really want to have a duel with you. What do you think? Of course, I will also use a peerless sacred tool as the wager. Murong Yu's face revealed a hesitant look. Brother, rest assured, I'll let you win. I won't let you lose very badly. Seeing Murong Yu's hesitant appearance, Xian Hua continued talking. Except, Yang Hao had black lines all over his face. Wasn't Xian Hua stepping on him in a roundabout way? But he firmly believed that Xian Hua was not Murong Yu's match. Of course, it was in terms of speed. Okay, a peerless sacred tool. Murong Yu considered for a while before gritting his teeth and agreeing, with a look of not having confidence. Looking at Murong Yu's appearance, Xian Hua became calmer in his heart. Although he had competed with Yang Hao countless times, both parties did not put in their greatest effort each time. But it was different with Murong Yu. He could use his strength at will. Furthermore, as long as he defeated Murong Yu, then it would represent that he was stronger than Yang Hao. Why wouldn't he do it? Meanwhile, the little lowly who was familiar with Murong Yu was secretly laughing in her heart that Murong Yu knew how to act. After preparing, the two of them began. In the beginning, Xian Hua was like Yang Hao in the beginning, looking down on Murong Yu a little. But not long after, he could not laugh anymore. In the end, he was left far behind by Murong Yu like Yang Hao. How is it? Yang Hao went up and said with a smile. Xian Hua handed a peerless sacred tool to Murong Yu in incomparable depression, then glared fiercely at Yang Hao. You bastard, since you know he's so powerful, you still asked me to compete with him? You're pushing me into a fire pit. The smile on Yang Hao's face became even more brilliant. Who asked us to be brothers in distress? Scram, who's your brother? Xian Hua angrily scolded. Murong Yu ignored these two quarrelsome lovers. After putting the peerless sacred tools into the Hichu Luo Shu, he wondered if he should immediately refine them and break through to the imperishable stage. After all, the Undead Valley on the 4th level of the Saint Tomb wasn't that easy to explore. Little lowly, let's go. After thinking for a moment, Murong Yu decided to leave the quarrelsome lovers before entering the Hichu Luo Shu to cultivate. Brother Murong Yu, where are you going? Do you want to go to the Undead Valley to take a look? Your speed is so heaven-defying. If your soul can become a saint, you'll be like a tiger that has grown wings and become even stronger. Seeing that Murong Yu and Xian Hua were about to leave, Yang Hao immediately stopped bickering with Xian Hua and invited Murong Yu to come. Undead Valley? Murong Yu's heart stirred. Wasn't he also going to Undead Valley? He didn't know where Undead Valley was at the moment. If he went with these two guys, it would save him a lot of effort. Moreover, he wasn't in a hurry to cultivate. Anyway, peerless sacred tools were enough. As long as he sped up time, Murong Yu could instantly refine the 4 peerless sacred tools and raise his cultivation level. Therefore, he decided to go with them. However, it didn't take long for him to regret it. These two guys had been bickering ever since they met. It wasn't that I didn't like you. It was that you didn't like me. They kept bickering and never stopped. In the end, Murong Yu and Little Lowly were forced to use their power to block their ears and directly block out their voices. Only then did they have peace. However, following behind these two guys wasn't without benefits. The fierce beasts they encountered were directly dealt with by them. There was no need for Murong Yu to do anything. Moreover, Those experts from other races who wanted to attack didn't dare to do anything after seeing Yang Hao and Xianhua's identities. After all, these two races weren't to be trifled with. Before knowing their identities, they didn't dare to act rashly. Otherwise, they would be incessantly hunted down by the two races. Chapter 1384. Undead were called ghosts in the secular world. In fact, undead were actually soul bodies. All living things had life, and the stronger the life, the stronger the soul. For example, the soul of a supreme powerhouse was definitely many times stronger than the soul of a great sage. Apart from that, there were also soul sages. They specialized in soul cultivation, so their souls were especially powerful. In this world, the death of a life was divided into two parts: the death of the physical body and the death of the soul. However, the death of the physical body was usually followed by the death of the soul. However, there was a huge difference between these two methods of death. The soul body might not die after the physical body died, and the more powerful soul could reform the physical body and recover to its original state. However, after the death of the soul, even if the physical body was intact, the physical body would become a walking corpse due to the lack of a soul and eventually perish completely. Undead were the soul bodies after the physical body died. These soul bodies could not reform the physical body for various reasons, so they could only cultivate their soul bodies. However, unlike the souls of ordinary people, soul bodies did not have a clear consciousness. They only had the simplest consciousness, survival, and cultivation. Of course, some extremely powerful undead would also have a strong consciousness, but this was only a minority. These undead were a race of their own, and they only had the instinct to devour souls to cultivate. Whether it was humans, demons, or other races' sages, they were all targets for them to devour. Of course, some animals, plants, and so on also had souls. However, these souls were too weak, and the undead did not bother to devour them. The Undead Valley was actually not just a valley. It was an extremely vast area. Here, hundreds of millions of undead wandered, waiting for an opportunity to devour the souls of the saints that passed by. When the fourth level of the Sage Tomb opened, many people did not know of the existence of the Undead Valley, so they barged in. Thus, a tragedy occurred. Almost all the saints that barged into the Undead Valley were annihilated. Even sage kings and ancestor sages had their souls devoured by the dark abyss. In other words, there were at least ancestor sages in the Undead Valley, and even primal chaos ancestor sages. At the very least, there were several ancestor sages. Otherwise, how could the souls of ancestor sages be destroyed? Of course, there was the possibility that there were no ancestor sages or above in the Undead Valley. Specters were souls, after all. Their souls were so powerful that even an Empyrean saint could annihilate the soul of an ancestor saint. After a large number of saints had fallen, the saints had designated the Undead Valley as a forbidden area. Many people paled at the mention of this name. However, not long after, news spread that the soul bodies in the Undead Spirit Valley had a soul cultivation technique. Therefore, the Pool of Lightning, which was originally a forbidden area and no one dared to take half a step into it, suddenly became a hot spot. Countless people flocked to it. Their goal was to obtain the soul body's soul cultivation technique. If there was nothing, the enthusiasm of the people from the sacred sect would gradually fade and they would eventually leave this place. However, it just so happened that not long ago, someone had obtained an incomplete soul cultivation technique from a soul body. To say that it was incomplete was actually not correct. The cultivation technique that was obtained was only the tip of the iceberg. It was just a few words. In fact, he wasn't even sure if that cultivation technique was a soul cultivation technique. However, more and more people swarmed over. After all, a soul saint was much stronger than an ordinary saint. At this moment, Morong Yu and the other three were already outside the Undead Spirit Valley. The boundless Undead Spirit Valley was surrounded by people of different cultivation realms. Apart from them, There were even more people who had snuck into the undead spirit valley. However, there were endless shrill screams coming from the undead spirit valley. It was extremely terrifying and penetrated one's soul. Those were the screams of the saints who had been killed by the undead spirit valley. How is it? Do you want to go in and take a look? More on you. Although you're weak, your speed is much faster than ours. Your ability to escape is much stronger than ours. Once you realize that something is wrong, just turn around and run. However, with the two of us here, we will protect you, right? Isn't that right, little lowly? Xianhua patted Murong Yu's shoulder and looked at the little lowly with a smile. Do I need you to protect me? It's fine if you don't need me to protect you. Little Lolita waved the giant axe in her hand domineeringly and looked at Xianhua with disdain. Xianhua was instantly depressed. Upon seeing Xianhua's depression, Yang Hao burst into laughter. He was the happiest to see Xianhua suffer. However, Yang Hao was also bewildered by little Lolita's background because not only was little Lolita not afraid, but she was also excited as though she was about to charge into the undead spirit valley for a big battle. Murong Yu didn't say a word. He looked at the undead spirit valley from afar and revealed an excited expression. Upon seeing Murong Yu's expression, Yang Hao and Xianhua couldn't help but feel helpless. Why were these two fellows acting like this? Are they both battle maniacs? It was a pity that Yang Hao and Xianhua couldn't see Murong Yu's soul in his spiritual space. At this moment, Murong Yu's soul was trembling violently. It wasn't because of nervousness or fear. It was because of excitement. Yes, excitement. Although he was still quite a distance away from the real undead spirit valley, Murong Yu could already feel an ocean-like aura coming from the undead spirit valley. It was this aura that made Murong Yu's soul excited. Murong Yu could even feel that the undead spirit valley might allow him to reach the 3-star level. Once his soul reached the 3-star level, Murong Yu would be able to easily kill the souls of profound sages. Even ancient sages could be easily slain by him. Let's go. Thinking that he could improve the realm of his soul, Murong Yu couldn't help but say. After bidding farewell to little Lolita and the others, he took the lead and soared into the sky, shooting towards the undead spirit valley. Yang Hao, Xianhua, and little Lolita also soared into the sky at the same time, quickly disappearing from everyone's sight. 2 profound sages and 2 undead realm experts. For guys who don't want to live. Seeing Murong Yu's group of 4 rushing towards the undead spirit valley, the people who had been lingering outside the undead spirit valley for a long time couldn't help but shake their heads. They had been observing this place for a long time, and many ancient sages and even sage kings hadn't come out, let alone Murong Yu's group. We'll soon hear their screams. Everyone sneered. However, to their disappointment, no screams of Murong Yu's group of 4 could be heard even after a long time had passed. Perhaps they didn't even have time to scream before they were killed. Everyone thought in their hearts. Stop! While they were flying, Murong Yu suddenly shouted through voice transmission. At the same time, he landed first and hit on a mountaintop. What did you find? Yang Hao and Xianhua came to Murong Yu's side, but they didn't hide. They just looked at Murong Yu with some suspicion. After all, the 2 profound sages hadn't found anything. So what could Murong Yu have found? It wasn't that they didn't believe Murong Yu, but that there was a gap of 3 realms between the 2 sides. There is an undead ahead, if I'm not mistaken. Murong Yu's eyes shone brightly as he looked ahead, a hint of joy flashing across his face. Murong Yu's soul force was much stronger than Yang Hao's and Xianhua's. Moreover, he was very sensitive to soul force. He naturally saw the wandering undead ahead, but Yang Hao and Xianhua didn't notice it. Where is it? Yang Hao and Xianhua asked. However, they were still full of doubts. They didn't believe it at all. So Murong Yu told them the location of the soul in detail. As a result, the 2 of them saw the undead. The undead was secretly hiding in a small cave. Just now, the 2 of them had swept through the cave with their divine senses, but they hadn't found the undead. The undead were about the same size as a normal person, but their whole body was transparent. If one didn't pay careful attention, it was very likely that their physical body would overlook them. Moreover, because of the special nature of the soul body, ordinary people couldn't see it with their divine senses. And because Murong Yu was a soul saint, those souls couldn't escape his eyes at all. However, to Murong Yu's surprise, the light of these souls' power wasn't strong. Presumably, it was because they only had strong soul force. Whoosh, whoosh. Although they couldn't see the strength of the undead, Yang Hao and Xianhua still rushed up at the first moment, about to attack the undead. Murong Yu just wanted to remind them, but it was too late. Then he smiled and waited to see the two of them suffer. He and the little lowly were already used to them rushing out at the same time, because along the way, they were always in a state of competition. In a flash, they had already rushed to the front of the small cave and then stretched out their big hands to grab the undead at the same time. At the same time, the undead had also discovered Yang Hao and Xianhua. Even Murong Yu saw the undead's face reveal a ferocious expression. Squeak! The undead let out a sharp, ear-piercing sound. Waves of sound attacks shook the void, creating layers of ripples, and swept toward Xianhua and Yang Hao. In an instant, the souls of the two, who were caught off guard, seemed to be crazily pierced by millions of sharp needles, tearing through the air. At the same time, the undead attacked again. Waving both hands, waves of soul force quickly slashed at the souls of Yang Hao and Xianhua. The physical bodies of Yang Hao and Xianhua were equivalent to nothing and couldn't block the undead soul attack at all. In just an instant, the undead's attack had already rushed into their soul space, quickly slashing at their souls. Damn! Xianhua exclaimed, and his figure instantly retreated. Chapter 1385. You want to kill the undead like this? Seeing Xianhua retreat, Yang Hao couldn't help but sneer. But soon, his expression changed, and he retreated at the same time. Xianhua said disdainfully, "You seem to be very powerful." Yang Hao smiled embarrassedly and continued to retreat. His eyes flashed as he looked at the soul that had already rushed out of the cave. It was the undead. At the same time, the two of them had already wiped out the soul force that had attacked their soul space. After all, the two of them were powerhouses in the sound-seeking realm, and the undead was not very strong. Thus, it was easily wiped out. But even so, their souls were still full of fear. If they had reacted a beat slower, their souls would have been torn apart. Thus, Yang Hao and Xianhua were both furious. How could they endure losing so much face in front of their sworn enemy and in front of others? So, the two of them shouted at almost the same time, stopped, and charged at the undead that was pouncing over. Suddenly, a white and a black holy light soared into the sky. The terrifying aura of the profound sage realm burst out from their bodies like stormy waves. Incomparably violent power gushed out from their hands, forming a huge sword and saber in the void, and then fiercely slashed at the undead that was shooting over. Puff! Puff! A saber and a sword slashed at the undead almost at the same time. There was almost no obstruction at all. The undead was cut into 3 parts by them. But before Yang Hao and Xianhua could rejoice, the undead that had been cut into 3 parts returned to its original state and pounced at them with bared fangs and brandished claws. And in front of the undead, an incomparably terrifying soul attack once again strangled them. Nothing happened at all. Xianhua and Yang Hao turned pale with fright and instantly retreated, avoiding the other party's soul attack. The body of the undead was different from that of ordinary souls. If an ordinary soul was cut by the two of them like this, it would definitely have been torn apart, and even if it did not die, it would have been seriously injured. But this undead's body was like air, and when they slashed it, it was indeed torn apart. But then it quickly healed. Yang Hao and the other two attacked one after another, but it was still the same situation. However, they also discovered that the undead weren't completely unharmed by the way they were slashing at them. After each slash, the power of the undead would weaken a little. Although it was extremely weak, it was basically negligible. However, if this continued, the power of the undead would be exhausted. However, if they wanted to exhaust the undead to death, Xianhua and Yang Hao would most likely be exhausted to death first. Although they had already filled their soul space with power, the soul power of the undead was indeed very strong. Every attack would consume some of their power. Let's kill him together. Yang Hao and Xianhua exchanged a glance, then stopped competing and attacked at the same time. Immediately, two types of energy, one white and one black, burst out in a frenzy, enveloping the surrounding area. Boom, boom, boom. The two forces condensed into a single force in the void, enveloping the undead and frantically killing it. Creak, creak, the undead let out an incomparably mournful cry, which was extremely horrifying. Under the cooperation of Yang Hao and Xianhua, although the undead was powerful, its power was still constantly being erased. In the end, the undead exploded with a bang and was directly obliterated, dying cleanly. Seeing this scene in the distance, Murong shook his head, feeling that these two guys were too wasteful. That was a soul body. Devouring it could restore a lot of his soul power. How is it? Is the undead easy to kill? Murong and the little lowly walked over and asked with a smile. Yang Hao and Xianhua's faces were dark. Seeing the two of them in such a sorry state, they knew that the undead were not easy to kill. But before, they kept saying that they would protect Murong. This was just a not-so-powerful undead. If it was a more powerful one, wouldn't it be able to beat them until they fled? And if they encountered a group of undead, they could only flee. One must know that in the Undead Valley, there were not many undead that were alone. Generally, the undead would appear in groups. The two shook their heads and turned to look at the Undead Valley ahead. Next time you encounter an undead, don't kill them. Take them down first and read their memories to see if there are any cultivation methods. When the undead were obliterated, their memories naturally dissipated. The two of them did not gain anything. So the four of them set off for the Undead Valley again. On the way, Yang Hao looked at Murong somewhat embarrassedly. These undead are very powerful. If you find something wrong, just run away immediately. Hearing this, Xianhua rolled his eyes, but did not say anything. After all, he had also seen the strength of the undead. Murong nodded and did not speak, continuing on the way. Not long after, Murong stopped. You found another undead? Xianhua approached and asked. Murong nodded. There are two, and they're a little stronger than the one we encountered before. Do you two want to kill them? Yang Hao and Xianhua smiled embarrassedly at first, and then Yang Hao said, Xianhua and I will take one each. If we can't even kill these undead, we don't need to go deeper. Xianhua nodded, and then the two of them were about to fly out. However, Murong's speed was much faster than theirs. At the same time, Murong had already passed them far away. Murong, what are you doing? Seeing this, Yang Hao and Xianhua were shocked. They stretched out their big hands to grab Murong. With their strength, it was already difficult to kill that undead, let alone Murong, who was in the undead realm. The little lowly took a step forward and blocked the two of them. At the same time, she said with a smile, Big scoundrel never does things that he is not sure of. Just wait and watch the show. If Murong can't handle it, you can save him. Yang Hao and Xianhua looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. They had seen how terrifying the soul attack of the undead was. It was difficult for them to resist, let alone Murong. Once Murong's soul was attacked, it would be too late for them to rescue him. Are you so sure? The two looked at the confident little lowly and were somewhat doubtful. The little lowly just pointed in the direction of Murong and stopped talking. So, the two of them looked over. Immediately, their eyes widened. While they were talking, Murong had already rushed in front of the two undead. After discovering Murong, the two undead immediately launched an attack. Soul-devouring slash. Before they attacked, Murong's attack had already been slashed out. Suddenly, Murong's soul force formed a huge saber and slashed through the two undead. With a puff sound, the two undead were directly cut in half at the waist. At this time, Yang Hao, Xianhua, and the others happened to look over. What's going on? Seeing the two undead being cut in half, Yang Hao and Xianhua suddenly turned pale with fright. The current situation was completely different from when they were fighting the undead. After they cut the undead in half before, it returned to its original state in less than a moment. But now, the two undead had not returned to their original state. Moreover, sharp and unpleasant screams kept coming out of their mouths. Yang Hao and Xian Hua saw the upper bodies of the two undead twisting wildly, as if they were in great pain. 1-star soul. Murong Yu's heart moved. While fighting, he had discovered that the soul strength of the two undead had reached 1 star, and his soul was at the 2-star 6th heavenly layer, which was much stronger than these two undead. Thus, with a single slash, the two undead spirits were almost annihilated. This was because Murong Yu did not obliterate their consciousness. After cutting these two souls, Murong Yu stretched out his big hand, grabbed the 4 parts of the undead, and swallowed them into his mouth. Swallowed. Seeing this scene, Xianhua and Yang Hao were taken aback, and shock flashed in their eyes. At this time, Murong Yu had already sat down cross-legged and began to refine the two 1-star soul level undead. In the blink of an eye, Murong Yu stood up again. Two 1-star souls, compared to ordinary souls, contained much more soul power. However, it still could not fill up the soul force that Murong Yu had consumed before. But a few more of these souls would be enough. Moreover, Murong Yu was still confident that he could upgrade his soul to the 3-star realm. Murong Yu is a soul sage? At this time, the little lowly trio had already come to Murong Yu's side, while Yang Hao and Xianhua looked at Murong Yu in shock. Murong Yu looked at the two with a smile, and then nodded. Are you surprised? This time, Murong Yu took the initiative to reveal that he was a soul sage to Yang Hao and Xianhua. It was not that he was careless, but he did it deliberately. He could see that the two of them could become friends or even brothers. But this was before. As the saying goes, people's hearts are unpredictable. Who knows what they would think after discovering that Murong Yu was a soul sage? Would they kill him to silence him? Therefore, Murong Yu wanted to take this opportunity to test the two. If there was still nothing strange about the two of them, and they still had ideas about him, he would definitely become friends with these two. If these two people had ideas about him, Murong Yu naturally had means to kill them. I'm really surprised. Boy, do you still treat us as friends? You didn't even tell us this? Yang Hao glared at Murong Yu and said with some displeasure, Idiot, you didn't ask him at all, okay? Xianhua looked at Yang Hao with contempt as if looking at an idiot. Yang Hao smiled embarrassedly and then continued to ask, These undead can improve your strength? So you're here to cultivate? Murong Yu nodded and admitted it directly. Anyway, there was nothing to hide. Chapter 1386. It just so happens that we also want to get the soul cultivation method from the undead. Let's go in together. Xianhua interrupted. They were just shocked by the fact that Murong Yu was a soul sage. They didn't have any other thoughts. They didn't even think of asking Murong Yu about the soul sage cultivation method. After all, the cultivation method was a person's secret. Just like the main cultivation methods of the true martial temple, they wouldn't leak it out. Even if others asked, they wouldn't tell them. Moreover, if the two of them asked Murong Yu about the soul sage cultivation method, it would definitely make Murong Yu feel disgusted. Then, the friendship they had just built would vanish. So, they continued to advance towards the Undead Valley. The closer they got to the Undead Valley, the higher the chances of them encountering undead. Moreover, these undead were often in groups. It was very rare for them to be alone. However, with Murong Yu, a soul sage, these undead posed no threat to them. However, to their disappointment, although they took down a few undead, they didn't have any memories. They didn't even have fragments of memories. In the end, these undead were all devoured by Murong Yu. After devouring a few 1-star undead, Murong Yu's dried-up soul pond finally recovered to its original state. From now on, Murong Yu didn't devour undead to replenish his soul strength. Instead, he used them to cultivate and increase the size of his soul pond. The bigger his soul pond, the stronger his soul pond. There are a lot of undead in the valley ahead. Don't move. I'll lure a few over. Xianhua stopped Morongyu and the other two. Then, his figure flashed and rushed towards the small valley ahead. There were hundreds of undead of different strengths circling around the valley. They constantly roamed around the valley. However, they were always in the same area. It was like a patrolling army. Among the many undead, there was a relatively large undead. It was surrounded by many undead like stars surrounding the moon. It seemed to be the leader of the undead. 2-star soul. Murongyu's eyes lit up when he sensed the powerful soul aura of this undead. Just as Murongyu's eyes lit up, Xianhua had already rushed into the valley. Whoosh! Xianhua hid his aura, and the general undead could not discover him at all. However, as soon as he entered the valley, the 2-star undead had already discovered him. A pair of eyes flitted across the void and landed on Xianhua. At that moment, Xianhua's body was fine, but his soul shook violently. It was as if he had been struck by the 9 layers of tribulation lightning at the same time, almost exploding. Xianhua was shocked, and his scalp went numb. At the same time, the 2-star undead let out an ear-piercing shriek. Then, Xianhua and the others saw the hundreds of undead looking at him in unison, and at the same time, they charged straight at him. More than 100 strands of soul power were like a torrent, tearing apart the void and rapidly twisting towards Xianhua. Xianhua's expression changed drastically, and his scalp was about to explode. These were all 1-star undead, and the soul of each one was many times stronger than his. With his strength, if there were only 1 or 2 of them, he still had no problem and could easily block them. But if there were 3, it would be quite difficult for him to block them. If there were 4, he could not resist at all and could only flee. But now, there were more than 100 of them. These strands of soul power surged and could kill him in an instant. So he let out a strange cry, turned around, and fled. The undead are coming. Everyone run. Xianhua let out a strange cry and flew in the direction of Murongyu's group of 3. But soon, he came to his senses. With a flash of his figure, he flew diagonally. He knew that if he led these undead over, it would only make Murongyu and the others die with him. You two run away quickly. Yang Hao hastily said to Murongyu and the little lowly, then took a step forward and headed for Xianhua. During this process, a terrifying force was shot out by him, bombarding the undead who were chasing after Xianhua. Why should we run away? Murongyu's eyes shone brightly. These were all great supplements. If he swallowed them in one fell swoop, it was estimated that his soul pond would swell up by a fold. So he told little lowly to be careful. He also stepped out behind Yang Hao and rushed towards the undead. He was even faster than Yang Hao. Almost in an instant, he had rushed behind the more than 100 undead. Xianhua, don't stop. Just keep leading these undead. Wait for me to deal with them. As he spoke, Murongyu made his move. Star Net destroys the sky. Murongyu immediately unleashed an area of effect soul attack. As a result, soul forces that were many times stronger than these undead shot out, forming a huge heavenly king in the void china. It locked onto a dozen undead and fiercely shrouded them. The dozen or so undead seemed to have sensed the danger and slowed down. There were even a few that turned to face Murongyu, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws to kill. Murongyu's face was cold. Under his control, the heaven-destroying star Cataclysm rushed down. In the blink of an eye, the heavenly net formed by the soul force had already enveloped the dozen or so undead. At the same time, Murongyu's incomparably powerful soul power also submerged them. Puff, puff, puff. These specters only had 1-star souls, but Murongyu had already reached 2 stars, 6 heavenly layers. He was more than an entire realm above them. Therefore, they could not resist Murongyu's attack at all, and their little consciousness was directly obliterated. Without consciousness, these undead could not continue to attack, even if their bodies were still there. Murongyu opened his big mouth, and with his slurp, these dozen undead were swallowed into his stomach. What abnormal strength! Seeing this scene, Yang Hao and Xianhua could not help but exclaim secretly. After swallowing these dozen undead, Murongyu did not stop, and the heaven-destroying star cataclysm bombarded again. As a result, more than a dozen undead had their consciousness obliterated by him and were finally swallowed. Squeak, squeak. After swallowing 30 undead in a row, the two-star soul that was still in the valley once again let out a sharp and unpleasant howl. Swish! Before the two-star undead's howl fell, the remaining 80 to 90 undead gave up chasing Xianhua and turned to attack Murongyu at the same time. Murongyu's face changed slightly. Taking a step out, his figure rose into the air and flew towards the distance. However, during this process, the heaven-destroying star cataclysm kept strangling out. Any undead that was attacked by Murongyu would have their consciousness wiped out. However, Murongyu, who was being chased, did not have time to devour those undead that were killed. Seeing the undead being killed by Murongyu one after another, Xianhua and Yang Hao simply stopped and just stayed in place to look at Murongyu. The Undead Valley is a forbidden area for others, but it is a blessed land for Murongyu. I wonder what realm Murongyu can raise his strength to this time. Yang Hao said with a sigh, I'm looking forward to it. I heard that there are even Ancestor Sages and Primal Chaos Ancestor Sages in the Undead Valley. I wonder if Murongyu could devour these undead, or even the souls of the entire Undead Valley. If that's the case, will his strength directly skyrocket to the Primal Chaos Ancestor Realm? If he reaches the Primal Chaos Ancestor Realm, with the strength of his soul becoming a saint, he will probably be able to fight against Supremes, right? Xianhua said with bright eyes. Yang Hao's face darkened. Do you think it's so easy to raise one's realm? If you can raise your cultivation by just devouring energy, then the holy world will be full of primal chaos ancestor sages. Of course not for others, but Murongyu might be an exception, Xianhua said with a smile, his face full of confidence. No one knew who gave him such confidence. Yang Hao rolled his eyes and did not bother to continue talking nonsense with Xianhua. As the undead were killed one by one, the number of undead chasing Murongyu decreased. After a while, the remaining undead were also killed by Murongyu. Then, Murongyu walked back and devoured the undead that he'd killed, one by one, into his stomach. Murongyu, since you are so abnormal, we should be able to go to the Undead Valley and explore it. Since so many powerful souls can be born there, there should be a Soul Saint artifact or something similar inside. Yang Hao's eyes suddenly flashed as he said, How do you know there's such a saint artifact? Maybe there's nothing there at all? Xianhua could not help but refute. Won't we know if we go in and take a look? Yang Hao was not to be outdone. Murongyu rolled his eyes. There was still a long way to the Undead Valley, but they had already encountered a 2-star undead. How many star undead were there in the Undead Valley? If there were more than 3 stars, Murongyu would not dare to go in. A 2-star soul, huh? Murongyu turned his head to look at the valley from before, only to see that the 2-star soul had already turned into a stream of light and flew forward. It had actually escaped without a trace. Where do you think you're going? Murongyu shouted. He took a step forward, smashed the void, and chased after it. The soul power of a 2-star undead was much greater than that of a 1-star undead. Murongyu did not want to let go of this tonic. Squeak, squeak. Seeing Murongyu chasing after it, the 2-star undead turned its head and bared its teeth at Murongyu while running away. Its face was ferocious, and the warning was very strong. Murongyu smiled. The consciousness and intelligence of this 2-star undead were much stronger than that of a 1-star undead. It even dared to threaten him. However, he was not afraid. Space shuttle. Murongyu instantly increased his speed, and after a few breaths, he caught up. At the same time, he quickly used this soul-devouring slash to slash at the 2-star undead that was fleeing in panic. Chapter 1387. The escaping 2-star undead should be around the 2-star second celestial layer. There was a huge gap between it and Murongyu's 2-star 6 celestial layer soul. Therefore, when Murongyu's soul-devouring slash hit its body, the two-star undead's consciousness was almost shattered. Although it was not completely shattered, because it lost most of its consciousness, the undead was immediately confused. Its speed also slowed down. Immediately, Murong Yu once again used the soul-devouring slash to completely obliterate the two-star undead's consciousness. Finally, Murong Yu opened his mouth and swallowed the two-star undead into his stomach. At this time, there was a two-star undead and more than 101-star undead in Murong Yu's soul space. I'll refine these undead first. You protect me, Murong Yu said, then sat cross-legged on the ground and began to cultivate. Yang Hao and Xianhua looked at each other and saw the strange look in each other's eyes. Murong Yu is cultivating in front of us. This is because he thinks highly of us. He treats us as friends. We must not let him down and do anything to let him down. Yang Hao and Xianhua both thought of this method at the same time. Immediately, the two of them spread out and protected Murong Yu from two directions. Devour. In the soul space, Murong Yu's soul opened its mouth and swallowed dozens of undead. Then, these undead spirits were quickly refined, turning into pure and primitive soul power that surged into his soul. Because of the fusion of the soul-devouring bead, Murong Yu's soul had the ability to devour and refine souls. It was like a furnace of chaos. The soul pool could not directly expand. The stronger the soul, the larger the soul pool. Therefore, if one wanted to increase the size of the soul pool, one must improve the power of the soul. A large amount of soul power poured into the soul body. So Murong Yu felt that his soul was becoming more and more condensed, and his realm was becoming more and more powerful. After devouring more than 101-star souls, his soul pool finally started to expand. It was now 600 miles wide. Murong Yu's soul lake was now much stronger than before, which was originally only 550 miles wide. 700 li. After Murong Yu devoured all the undead spirits and the two-star undead spirit, his soul pool expanded to a size of 350 kilometers, and his soul realm had finally risen to the two-star seventh firmament. His soul power had doubled. In other words, Murong Yu's strength had doubled. If he were to face a low-rank profound sage at this time, there would be no suspense in the outcome. The strength of a low-rank profound sage simply wouldn't be able to withstand the bombardment of Murong Yu's soul force. Low-level profound sages would be directly and quickly killed by him. Even if it was a high-level profound sage, Murong Yu would still be able to kill them. He wouldn't have to exhaust all his means and go through untold hardships like before. The soul pond of a two-star seventh firmament is 700 miles wide. According to Hichu, the soul pond of a two-star eighth firmament will increase to 1,000 miles wide. The soul pond of a two-star ninth firmament will be 1,500 miles wide. And if one wants to enter the three-star eighth firmament, their soul pond must be 3,000 miles wide. I wonder what realm the Undead Valley will allow me to reach. Murong Yu's heart was full of expectations. In the next moment, he slowly opened his eyes. Sensing that Murong Yu had opened his eyes, Xianhua and Yang Hao immediately looked over. However, when they met Murong Yu's eyes, a dangerous aura arose from their souls. Murong Yu's soul realm has increased, and it's even stronger than before. At this time, Murong Yu can already pose a considerable threat to us. Yang Hao and Xianhua looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. If Murong Yu wasn't a threat to them, their souls wouldn't have such a reaction. Murong Yu's speed was originally faster than theirs, and now Murong Yu's soul realm gave them a dangerous feeling. In other words, if they fought a life and death battle, they might be killed by Murong Yu. It should be known that Murong Yu is only in the undead realm. They couldn't help but be surprised. In fact, they didn't know Murong Yu's true strength. A long time ago, Murong Yu could already kill profound sages. Wasn't ancestor blood Rain powerful? Wasn't he at the peak of the 9th stage profound sage, killed by Murong Yu? However, Yang Hao and Xianhua weren't ordinary profound sages. Their strength allowed them to jump realms and kill ancient sages. Shall we continue? Xianhua and Yang Hao didn't ask how much Yu's strength had increased. There were two reasons. After all, Yu cultivated a soul cultivation method. If they rashly asked, they were afraid that Yu would misunderstand. Apart from that, they didn't want to look for trouble. Yu nodded, and then the four of them rose into the air again and continued to go deeper, passing through 5 difficulties and slaying 6 generals. Yu and the others encountered more and more souls, and their strength became stronger and stronger. In the end, Yang Hao and Xianhua couldn't do anything to those undead souls. This place had completely become Yu's world. Yu didn't refuse anyone and killed as many as came. After devouring countless souls, his soul pond had soared to more than 900 kilometers. As long as it reached 1,000 kilometers, his soul pond would reach the 2-star 8th heavenly layer. However, Yu also discovered this. With the continuous improvement of his soul realm, those 1-star souls were no longer of any use to him. Often, when a 1-star soul was devoured, it could only increase his soul strength by a little. However, in line with the idea that mosquitoes were still meat, no matter how small they were, Yu kept killing those undead. It was just that he didn't devour them immediately. Yu stored them away so that he could replenish his soul force in case of an emergency. These low-level undead have no memory at all. If we want to get a soul cultivation method, I'm afraid we have to go deep into the undead valley. It's just that these undead are too powerful. Not to mention that they are in groups. The weakest among them is a 2-star undead. Xianhua flapped his 10 black wings and said with a depressed expression, they didn't know how others classified the undead. They just classified them according to Yu's level. Yu was also somewhat helpless. 2-star undead posed no threat to him, but enough ants could bite an elephant to death. If groups of undead attacked at the same time, Yu couldn't bear it. Therefore, these days, they wandered outside the undead valley and killed some 1-star souls. However, these souls had no effect on them. Yu's soul pond stopped expanding because of this. You wait here. I'll go check out the situation first. After pondering for a while, Yu decided to enter the undead valley alone. All right. Yang Hao and the other 2 agreed to Yu's proposal. After all, among the 4 of them, only Yu was a soul sage. Therefore, Yu's figure flashed, and he took a step forward and then disappeared from the sight of Xianhua and the others. Invisibility, Yang Hao and Xianhua's faces showed shock again. Who was Yu? Why were his abilities so heaven-defying? Both of them were favored by God, but after being together with Yu, they knew what it meant to be favored by God and what it meant to be defeated. What other heaven-defying abilities does Yu have? Yang Hao and Xianhua looked at each other, but the little lowly maintained a calm expression because she already knew Yu's various secrets. Invisibility, hiding the strength of his entire body. Yu directly traveled through the void and shot toward the undead valley. Boom, boom, boom. Yu hadn't walked far when he was attracted by a terrifying and powerful soul attack. Therefore, with a thought, he flew over. In a valley, a green-robed young man of about 15 or 16 years of age was fighting against over 100 undead creatures. With just a glance, Yu was stunned. The youth's realm wasn't very high, and he looked like he was in the undead realm. However, his opponent was more than 103-star undead. The soul pressure that erupted from the undead even made Yu's soul, which was close to the 2-star 8th celestial layer, tremble, and a sense of fear rose in his heart. This person is also a soul saint. Yu was shocked and looked carefully. Then he saw that the entire valley was covered with undead corpses, and he didn't know how many there were. Swish! When Yu looked over, the youth also seemed to see him and looked over from a distance in the middle of the battle. Boom! Yu's soul seemed to have been struck by thousands of lightning bolts at the same time and almost instantly exploded and was torn into millions of pieces. At this moment, Yu saw a look of disdain on the youth's face. Yu was shocked and a little angry. However, he knew that he wasn't this person's opponent, so he quickly retreated. At the same time that Murong Yu retreated, the youth had already slaughtered the 100 over 3-star undead under his feet. After killing these people, the youth opened his mouth, and the undead corpses in the valley were swallowed into his stomach. Seeing this scene, Murong Yu quickly retreated. This youth was too strong, and he didn't seem to be a good person, so Murong Yu didn't want to have a conflict with him for the time being. When I was in the Black Dragon City, I met a powerful soul saint, and here I met a youth who has at least a 3-star soul. Although there aren't many soul saints in the holy world, there are quite a few of them. Murong Yu's heart trembled, and he became more careful. After leaving the valley far away, Murong Yu continued to sneak into the undead valley. 2-star undead, 3-star undead, 4-star undead. Layers upon layers of undeads of different realms surrounded the real undead valley like an iron bucket. When Murong Yu crossed the 4-star undead's blockade, an incomparably huge city appeared in his sight. A city of undead. This was a country of undead. Chapter 1388. The huge city was equivalent to a kingdom. Inside it, there were wandering undead. Powerful and incomparably terrifying soul auras were constantly emitted from the undead kingdom, shaking the heavens and the earth. Feeling those incomparably huge soul auras, Murong Yu's soul trembled slightly. This was the suppression from a superior soul that was more powerful than him. Looking from afar, the wandering undead weren't moving randomly, but were moving in a very regular pattern. Just like the patrolling soldiers in human cities, they were patrolling their own cities and countries. There are countless undead with strength above 4-star. Murong Yu, who was hiding in the void, was shocked. Looking from afar, there were definitely more than 100 million undead in his line of sight. In addition to the undead patrolling and wandering around the city that he did not see, there were at least hundreds of millions of souls. If he could devour and refine all these undead, not to mention 3-star souls, he could even reach 7-star or 8-star souls. However, this was just Murong Yu's thought. It was enough to keep it in his heart. He did not dare to approach this country unless he was very, very powerful. I can only kill those wandering undead in the periphery. While I'm strong enough, I'll approach this place. Murong Yu thought in his heart, and then he was about to leave. Whoosh! Just as Murong Yu was about to leave, a stream of light shot over from afar. Then, it passed by Murong Yu in one fell swoop and rushed toward the undead kingdom ahead. Murong Yu was shocked. Who was so brave? So he looked over, and then his eyes narrowed slightly. That person was the powerful young man that he had accidentally met before. Perhaps he noticed Murong Yu's gaze. The young man turned his head to look at Murong Yu with a mocking expression on his face. At the same time, he had already slammed his palm down on the undead city below. Boom! The young man's cultivation realm was not high. He was only in the undead realm. However, his palm contained an incomparably powerful soul attack. After the earth-shattering noise, a large number of low-level undead near the city were directly shaken to death. Then, the young man reached out with his other hand and grabbed the corpses of the undead he had killed. Thus, he put the large pile of undead corpses into his storage space. However, at this moment, the countless undead creatures in the city were in an uproar. One by one, undead spirits with powerful auras soared into the sky and pounced toward the young man. The young man sneered. With a flicker of his body, he took a step forward and shot towards Murong Yu. Murong Yu's heart moved. Just as he was about to dodge, the youth had already struck out with his palm. Ripples immediately appeared in the void around Murong Yu. The strength of the undead realm was still unable to shatter the void. However, the youth's palm contained a soul attack. Murong Yu could ignore the youth's strength attack. However, he could not ignore his opponent's soul attack. With a thought, his soul pool that was infinitely close to the 2 stars' 8th heaven went completely berserk. Streaks of extremely condensed soul power shot out and instantly filled up the soul space. After that, his soul power rushed out and met the young man's soul attack head-on. Puff, puff, puff. The soul power of both sides collided in the void. The terrifying impact that erupted even tore the void apart. However, it was obvious that Murong-Yu's soul attack was not as powerful as the youth's. In the blink of an eye, Murong-Yu's soul power was torn apart by the youth. The youth's soul attack continued to rush towards Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu snorted coldly. However, he had already taken advantage of this time to retreat. Space travel. The youth obviously did not expect Murong-Yu's speed to be so fast. Therefore, his soul attack missed. However, Murong-Yu could not continue to hide in the void. He was shaken out of the void. Whoosh! The moment Murong-Yu appeared, he felt countless extremely powerful gazes locking onto him. Streaks of terrifying soul power tore the void apart and rolled over. Therefore, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless undead spirits that were at least 3 stars rose from the city and rushed towards Murong-Yu. During this process, streaks of terrifying aura that could tear the sky and the earth apart strangled down. In just a moment, the number of powerful undead spirits that rushed towards Murong-Yu had reached hundreds. Moreover, there were more and more of them. Kid, enjoy all of this. A sneer came, but the youth had already shot past Murong-Yu and quickly disappeared into the distant sky. Murong-Yu was furious in his heart. He had no enmity with this youth, and they had only met twice. Yet this person wanted to kill him. How could this not make him furious? For a moment, Murong-Yu's killing intent surged. He wished he could rush up and blast the youth into powder. However, Murong-Yu did not have that time. To be precise, those undead spirits did not give Murong-Yu time. Hundreds of undead spirits, at least 3 stars, rushed over. If Murong-Yu did not escape, he would definitely be torn to pieces by these undead spirits. Therefore, he turned around and fled. Space travel. However, although Murong-Yu was fast, the speed of these undead spirits was not slow either. Moreover, they had locked onto Murong-Yu's soul aura. Even if Murong-Yu was not in their line of sight, they still chased after him. Yang Hao and Xianhua were looking in the direction where Murong-Yu disappeared with a bored look on their faces. The little loli was also playing with her giant axe out of boredom. Just at this time, with a swish sound, a black shadow shot over from a distance. Before the figure could be seen clearly, an incomparably familiar aura flooded over. It's Murong-Yu. He's back. I wonder what's the situation in front of us. Yang Hao looked at Murong-Yu, who was rushing over, with an expectant look on his face. Run! Murong-Yu's anxious voice rang out. Following that, he turned in a circle in front of them and flew off in another direction. The little loli and the other 2 had not yet reacted to what was going on. Then, they saw thousands of undead converging into a torrent behind Murong-Yu. They were mighty and murderous as they chased after Murong-Yu. What's the situation? Yang Hao and the other 2 were nervous and almost ran away. But soon, they discovered that the undead were only chasing after Murong-Yu. Their existence was directly ignored by the undead. So, the 3 of them breathed a sigh of relief, but soon became worried again. I wonder if Murong-Yu can escape? Why is this guy so unlucky? How did he provoke so many powerful undead? Only after all the undead that were chasing after Mu Rongwang had turned to Murong-Yu did the 3 of them slowly rise into the air and give chase. Bad friends, seeing the little loli and the other 2 following behind the undead unhurriedly, Murong-Yu was so angry that he almost vomited blood. However, he also knew that it was better if Xianhua and the other 2 did not chase after him. The undead chasing after him were too powerful. Even if Xianhua and Yang Hao were profound sages, their souls were not sages. Once they were attacked, their souls would be directly annihilated. That was a very dangerous thing to do. If it were him, it would be different. Sooner or later, he would be able to shake off these undead. However, what made Murong-Yu feel helpless was the fact that this chase had taken him 3 days. Over the past 3 days, Muronyu had flown around the entire fourth floor of the Saint Tomb before he finally managed to shake off the undead creatures. Although, as Muronyu continued to escape, the weaker undead were gradually shaken off. However, several of the strongest undead creatures were still chasing after them. They were at least 4-star undead. Muronyu didn't even have the confidence to fight with them. Fortunately, he was fast enough and finally escaped into the Hichu Luoshu to get rid of them. Because of this, Muronyu's killing intent towards that young man became even stronger. He couldn't wait to find that young man and kill him. However, that young man's soul force was much stronger than his. If he rashly went to find him, he was afraid that he would be the one to suffer. I want to become stronger and devour more souls. Muronyu's anger soared to the sky. Muronyu, what's the situation? Did you poke the lair of the undead? Why are you being chased by so many undead? Xianhua couldn't help but ask the little lowly and the other two when they arrived at Muronyu's side. Thereupon, Muronyu briefly told them about the undead kingdom and the young man's matter. After listening, Yang Hao and the other two's killing intent soared to the sky, and they wanted to kill that young man. In addition to being angry, they were even more surprised by the undead kingdom. Undead kingdom. Could it be that some powerful souls are already like humans? Have they formed a country? Xianhua said with a frown. The undead had always been existences without any consciousness or intelligence. But now they had formed a country. This was really inconceivable. Undead creatures with intelligence and strength must have a cultivation method to cultivate the soul. However, such undead were just like humans. They were very difficult to deal with. What do we do now? Yang Hao, Xianhua, and the little lowly looked at each other. I'm going to stay here and hunt down the wandering souls. You guys make your own arrangements. Muronyu had already made such a plan. Yang Hao and Xianhua looked at each other, and then Yang Hao said, Anyway, I have nothing to do. I'll stay here with you. Who knows, we might really be able to obtain an undead cultivation method. With this fool here, how can I leave? I'll accompany you to the end, Xianhua said with a smile. As for the little lowly, she didn't have any objections. Thus, they returned to the vicinity of the undead valley. However, they deliberately took a big detour and came to the other side of the undead kingdom. They didn't want to meet that young man. It wasn't that Muronyu and the others were afraid of the young man, but there was no need for a conflict now. As long as Muronyu's soul reached 3 stars, then even if they didn't meet Muronyu, they would find that young man and kill him to avenge that day. Chapter 1389. Killing Undead, Devouring Undead, Strengthening His Soul, and Expanding His Soul Pool. Soul 8th Layer, Soul Pool 1,000 miles in size. Soul Pool 1,500 miles in size, 2 stars 9th Layer. After countless days and nights of struggle, Muronyu's Soul Pool finally reached a size of 1,500 miles. This was already the soul of a 2-star 9th layer. However, what made Muronyu depressed was that even if he devoured the soul of a 2-star 9th layer peak, he could not continue to strengthen his soul. He had to devour a 3-star undead, and a large number of these level undead. Muronyu suddenly felt bitter. Most of the undead in the area where he hunted were 2-star undead. Less than 1 in 100 had reached 3-star undead. Muronyu could only hunt one if he was lucky. However, such a small number could not help him break through to 3-star soul. Moreover, the effect of low-level 3-star undead was not so good. If it was a 4-star undead, Muronyu could easily break through. I want to continue to go deeper into the undead valley. On this day, Muronyu said to the little lowly trio with a dignified expression. The little lowly did not say anything, but Xianhua and Yang Hao were taken aback. If they continue to go deeper, the undead wandering in those areas were all 3-star undead, and even 4-star undead. These undead were powerful and in groups. Once trapped, Muronyu would die without a doubt. Muronyu, can't you slowly hunt undead here? Do you have to go in and take risks? Yang Hao said with a slight frown. Morong Yu shook his head. If he continued to hunt undead in this area, although the speed of improving his strength was slow, he could still improve his strength. It was just that this was too slow. Morong Yu urgently wanted to improve his strength. Zhao Jiqing's matter was like a thorn in his heart, stabbing his heart. He wanted to become stronger quickly, and then go to the Feng clan to bring Zhao Jiqing back. Moreover, he had too many enemies now. If he couldn't increase his strength quickly, he might be killed by his enemies one day. The closer ones were the outer hall disciples of the true martial temple, the heavenly light divine sect, the green thunder divine cult, and so on. Farther away were heaven fire city, heaven slaughter sect, and so on. Even further away were Zhao Yun's enemies, and even the sovereigns. Once Morong Yu's identity was exposed, Zhao Yun's enemies, the autarchs, and even the sovereigns would attack him. At that time, even if he hid in the secular world, he wouldn't be able to escape their pursuit. Therefore, Morong Yu had to raise his strength as much as possible before his identity was exposed. The stronger he was, the stronger his ability to protect himself. If he wanted to increase his strength quickly, he would have to take risks. This was exactly what they meant by seeking riches and honor in the midst of danger. Do you have to go in? Xianhua looked at Morong Yu worriedly. Morong Yu nodded. The three of you are free to do as you please. If there's anything, just send me a message. I'll go in first. Morong Yu said indifferently. Then, his figure flashed and disappeared from their sight. He didn't hide himself. Instead, he entered the Hichu Luoshu world. The closer he got to the kingdom of the undead, the stronger the undead. Moreover, they came in groups. With Morong Yu's current strength, it would be difficult for him to deal with them. Therefore, he had to increase his strength before entering. With a thought, for peerless sacred artifacts appeared in the void in front of Morong Yu. They floated in the void and emitted a faint sacred light. Morong Yu's face was resolute. He opened his mouth and swallowed the 4 peerless sacred artifacts into his stomach. Then, he entered the primal chaos furnace. Primal chaos furnace smelt all things. Refined. Morong Yu's heart moved. Then, the primal chaos furnace trembled slightly. The 2 peerless sacred artifacts were refined into 2 vast and incomparably pure energy. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk, the 2 energies condensed into a huge torrent and poured into Morong Yu's body. In the next moment, Morong Yu's strength rapidly increased. 9th level undead realm. Mid-9th level undead realm. Peak 9th level undead realm. The power of the 2 peerless sacred artifacts was simply too great. It directly raised Morong Yu's cultivation from peak 8th level undead realm to peak 9th level undead realm. Moreover, there was still a considerable amount of energy left. The power of 1 peerless sacred artifact is equivalent to the power of 100 peerless sacred artifacts. It might even exceed it. Today, there is a 90% chance of breaking through to the undead realm. The power contained in the peerless sacred artifacts exceeded Morong Yu's expectations. However, it gave him more confidence. At this time, Morong Yu could already see the thin but tough barrier of the undead realm. Break through the barrier. With a thought, Morong Yu directed the remaining energy to attack the barrier. He wanted to tear it apart so that he could enter the imperishable stage. However, although the barrier was only a thin layer, it was not so easy to break through. When Morong Yu exhausted almost all of his remaining energy, he was still unable to break through the barrier. In fact, the barrier only shook slightly from the impact. Morong Yu's heart sank. This barrier was harder to break through than any barrier he had seen before. Could 2 peerless sacred artifacts really help him break through? However, since things had already come to this, Morong Yu had no other choice. With a thought, the remaining 2 peerless sacred artifacts were refined by the chaos furnace. Immediately, the torrent-like energy was constantly directed by Morong Yu to attack the barrier. Failure after failure, impact after impact. Every impact would consume a considerable amount of energy. However, the more time passed, the more Morong Yu's heart sank. Even after exhausting 3/4 of his strength, he still couldn't break through the barrier. All he did was make the barrier thinner. I only have 1/10 of my energy left. Murongyu's heart had already sunk to the bottom. He did not expect that 2 peerless sacred artifacts would still be unable to break through. I'm still not prepared enough this time. I should prepare 1 more peerless sacred artifact before I try to break through. If I fail this time, I'm afraid I'll have to use 5 peerless sacred artifacts to break through next time. Murongyu muttered to himself. The barrier of the realm was a very strange thing. Before the first attempt, the barrier of the realm was the thinnest. However, after a failure, not only would the barrier of the realm be restored, but it would also become even tougher. The more attempts were made, the tougher the barrier of the realm would be, and the harder it would be to break through. This was also the reason why so many people would not try to break through the barrier of the realm without absolute confidence. Moreover, in addition to this, failure could also lead to death and many other possibilities. Some people who had reached the peak of the Undying Realm would rather stay at the peak of the Undying Realm for the rest of their lives than try to break through to the Undying Realm. They were afraid that if they failed, they would die or the barrier would become even tougher. I still have 1/10 of my energy left. One last attempt. If I fail, Murongyu's expression was a little ugly. However, he still guided the energy towards the barrier of the realm. Boom! Miracles often happened when one was in despair. Murongyu had already lost all hope and tried to break through the barrier of the realm without any hope. Then, the barrier of the realm that he had failed to break through countless times was torn open. As soon as the barrier of the realm was torn open, Murongyu's remaining energy surged out. In an instant, the barrier that was like a sacred mountain was torn to pieces. At this moment, the energy of heaven and earth swarmed over crazily and entered Murongyu's body out of thin air. In the blink of an eye, Murongyu's energy, which had almost dried up, was quickly replenished. His meridians were expanding. During this process, Murongyu's entire body felt swollen. This was because his meridians were expanding and his body was being tempered more and more. Murongyu sat cross-legged on the ground, guiding the energy that swarmed into his body to expand his meridians and temper his body at the same time. His meridians continued to expand, his body, bones, and even his flesh and blood were being tempered, becoming more and more condensed and pure. He had become even more powerful. When the energy stopped pouring in, Murongyu's meridians had become 10 times wider than before. Murongyu's body was also much stronger than before, but there was still a long way to go before it could break through to the level of a mid-grade sacred artifact. There was no other way. Murongyu's chaotic celestial body was originally very difficult to break through. Just like his cultivation, it needed to devour a lot of energy to advance. 10 times the strength of a 9th level undead. Feeling the incomparable power, Murongyu revealed a satisfied smile. Before, I could kill enemies 2 levels above me. Now that I've reached the undead realm, I should be able to kill an ancient sage expert, right? Killing a 1st level ancient sage shouldn't be a problem. Murongyu's eyes flashed, and his confidence was about to explode. He was only talking about his cultivation. If he combined it with soul attacks, time laws, and so on, even a mid-level ancient sage wouldn't be impossible to kill. So this is the undead realm. At this time, Murongyu's heart was filled with a very profound feeling. When he was in the undead realm, Murongyu was already truly immortal, and his lifespan was limitless. But now, the undead realm was even higher than the undead realm, and he was almost immortal. Now that he had truly reached the level of immortality, he was immortal. However, Murongyu still felt that his life was faintly connected to something. As for what that something was, Murongyu didn't know, because when he seriously sensed it, that thing disappeared. It said that every world has reincarnation. Although the undead realm is the true meaning of immortality, it can't jump out of reincarnation. Only after reaching the undead realm can one be qualified to escape reincarnation. But what is reincarnation? The thing I sensed is reincarnation? Murongyu frowned and thought in his heart. Chapter 1390. Reincarnation is also called the end of the world. While Moronyu was pondering, Hichu suddenly spoke. Without waiting for Moronyu to speak, Hichu continued. The so-called end of the world is the destruction of the world. A world, a civilization, they don't exist forever. They also have life. Just like the sacred world, the process from the beginning of the sacred world's formation to its destruction is called reincarnation. However, compared to other life forms, the life of a world is far too long. It's so long that it's almost an immortal existence. However, no matter how long a life is, there's still a limit. Once the limit is reached, that world will collapse and eventually be annihilated. However, after the world is destroyed, that life form will be reborn. This is reincarnation. In the sacred world, the undying realm is immortal. The undying realm is immortal and eternal. However, it's also relative. As long as the sacred world doesn't enter the end of the world and reincarnation, then the undying realm has an unlimited lifespan. Once reincarnation occurs, only those who reach the undying realm have the right to jump out of the reincarnation and won't be destroyed by the end of the world. Of course, it's not that the undying realm can definitely escape from reincarnation. They only have the right to escape from reincarnation. If you want to be truly immortal, then you have to jump out of reincarnation and not be restrained by the world. This is what it means to jump out of the three realms and not be in the five elements. Hichu explained a lot about reincarnation, and Moronyu finally understood. How long until the end of the sacred world? Moronyu suddenly asked. From the ancient times until now, the sacred world has gradually matured. In other words, it's equivalent to the youth of an ordinary person. It will only be destroyed after middle age and old age. Hichu pondered for a moment before saying, in that case, I still have enough time to increase my strength. However, how do I jump out of reincarnation? Moronyu was puzzled again. However, Hichu shook his head. Although he was a treasure, an artifact spirit born from the primal chaos, he hadn't experienced reincarnation. Or perhaps during the reincarnation, he had already fallen asleep and didn't know what reincarnation was like and how to transcend it. Moreover, none of his previous masters had lasted to the next reincarnation cycle. You should become a primal chaos controller, right? Hichu's words were not very certain. After becoming a primal chaos controller, you'll be able to control primal chaos. And the world was just one side of the chaos. If you can even control the chaos, why would you be afraid that you can't control the reincarnation cycle of the world? Moronyu nodded. Regardless of whether it was escaping reincarnation or his cultivation, his ultimate goal was to become a chaos controller. However, he knew that he was a celestial body of chaos. As long as he continued to grow and improve his strength without dying, he would definitely become a master of chaos one day. However, who knew if he had enough time? If he couldn't become a chaos controller before reincarnation, then he would be reincarnated. He could only jump out of the cycle of reincarnation. Hichu didn't know much about reincarnation, so Moronyu didn't continue to discuss this with him. So what if he knew? It would only make him look for trouble and worry for nothing. After consolidating his strength at the imperishable stage, Moronyu came out of Hichu Luoshu and flew towards the kingdom of the undead. After breaking through to the imperishable stage, Morongyu's stealth ability was even stronger. It was easier for him to travel through the kingdom of the undead without being discovered by the undead. Whoosh! Morongyu concealed himself and stealthily came behind a squad of 10 or so undead that were patrolling. Then, he viciously chopped down with the star Cataclysm Annihilation. With the strength of his soul that had reached the 9th firmament of the 2 stars, it was quite easy for him to kill ordinary 3-star undead. Therefore, these undead didn't even have time to react before their consciousness was suppressed and killed. In the end, Morongyu collected them into Hichu Luoshu. After killing these 3-star undead, Morongyu continued forward. Not long after, he collected a few more undead into Hichu Luoshu. In a flash, a few months had passed. In these few months, Muronyu had collected more than 90,000 undead into Hichu Luoshu, close to 100,000. With so many undead, I should be able to raise my soul to the 3-star realm, right? On this day, Muronyu dug a deep hole in the ground and then hid Hichu Luoshu while he entered Hichu Luoshu world. The reason why he did this was that Muronyu had once tried to hide Hichu Luoshu in the void. But later, it was discovered by an undead. It didn't matter that the undead had discovered it, but the most frightening thing was that this undead had notified the other undead. By the time Muronyu discovered it, Hichu Luoshu had already been surrounded by thousands of undead. If Muronyu had reacted quickly, he would have directly teleported away. Otherwise, he would have been killed by those undead. Even if it was just Hichu Luoshu's overflowing damage, it would be enough to kill him. Devour. In the void in front of Muronyu, there were a large number of undead whose consciousness had been wiped out floating in the void. Then Muronyu opened his mouth and directly devoured the thousands of undead. Refine. After devouring the souls, Muronyu began to refine them. As a result, his soul became stronger again. As the undead were devoured one by one, Murongyu's soul pond, which had been stagnant for a long time, began to slowly and continuously expand. 80,000, 70,000, 50,000, 30,000, the number of undead continued to decrease. Murongyu's soul pond expanded from 1,500 miles to 2,000 miles, 2,500 miles, and then 3,500 miles. 3,000 miles. Seeing that his soul pond had reached 3,000 miles, Murongyu's face revealed a trace of a smile. This was because 3,000 miles meant that Murongyu's soul had already reached the 3-star realm. However, after a while, Murongyu's face darkened. A 3-star soul spirit. Regardless of quantity or quality, the power of the soul was many times stronger than a 2-star peak 9th heaven soul spirit. It was at least 10 times stronger. However, Muronyu didn't feel his soul force being condensed. He didn't feel that his soul power was 10 times stronger than before, or even more. Exactly the same as before. Other than that, there were no signs of a breakthrough. What's the situation? Could it be that he hasn't broken through yet? Muronyu had a bad feeling in his heart. Thus, he continued to devour 3-star undead. Murongyu's soul pond continued to expand as more and more specters were devoured and refined. By the time he had devoured all the undead souls, his soul pool had expanded to 3,500 miles. And this was because Muronyu had no undead to devour. If he had more undead to devour, his soul pool would continue to grow. This situation only means that your soul pool is much stronger than an ordinary sage's soul spirit. The stronger your soul pool, the more powerful you are, Hichu said in a low voice. Muronyu nodded. He looked like he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Hichu was right. For example, 2 sages with 3-star souls. One of them had a soul pool of 3,000 miles, while the other had a soul pool of 5,000 miles. Which one was stronger? Obviously, the sage with a soul pool of 5,000 miles was stronger. First of all, the bigger the soul pool, the more power of the soul they could store. And the more souls they had, the harder it was to condense. And the harder it was to condense, the more powerful it would be after condensing. It was like a person's hair. 2 strands of hair condensed into a rope was much stronger than 1 strand of hair. And if 10 strands of hair condensed into a rope, although it was harder to condense into a rope than 2 strands of hair, the power of the rope was incomparable to that of 2 strands of hair. It was naturally a good thing that one's soul pool was bigger than an ordinary person's. Muronyu could even kill people above his level. However, the bigger the soul pool, the harder it was to break through. For example, Muronyu and the other sage had the same starting point, but Murongyu's soul pool was twice as big as the other sages. In this way, if Muronyu wanted to break through, he would need twice as much resources as the other sage, or even more. Under such circumstances, Muronyu was indeed stronger than the other sage. However, Murong, you could kill the other sage, even if the other sage's soul was 1 level higher than his. But what if the other sage was 2 or 3 levels higher than him? Would Murong you still be his match? The answer was obviously no. Therefore, with the same amount of resources, Murong you could only break through 1 level, but the other sage might be able to break through 3 levels in a row. In this way, as time passed, Murong Yu's shortcomings would be exposed. He would gradually lose to the other sage. Unless Murong Yu had more resources, fine, I'm used to it anyway. Murong Yu rolled his eyes. It was unknown whether he was sad or happy. Now his soul, strength, cultivation, and even physical body were much stronger than the average person. It was because of these that he was invincible among his peers and could kill people above his level. I want to see what the limit of my soul pool is. When can I break through to a 3-star soul? Murong Yu gritted his teeth and appeared in the kingdom of the undead. Hunt. Even sage kings and ancestral sages didn't dare to set foot in this place, but it became Murong Yu's backyard. He kept hunting undead here. After hunting a certain number of undead, he would enter the Hichu Luoshu to devour and refine the undead. Under his efforts, he devoured. His soul pool continued to strengthen. From the original 3,500 miles to 4,000 miles, 5,000 miles, and finally close to 6,000 miles. 5,999 li. It was only 1 mile away from reaching a radius of 6,000 miles. When his soul pool reached this point, Murong Yu's soul had reached its peak. No matter how many 3-star undead he devoured, his soul couldn't strengthen at all, and his soul pool couldn't expand at all. His soul and soul pool had both reached their limits. I can't even grow 3-star undead anymore. Do I have to refine 4-star undead to break through? Murong Yu thought to himself with a bitter expression. Chapter 1391. It seems that I really have to kill and devour 4-star undead to break through. After killing and devouring many undead, Murong Yu finally confirmed his guess helplessly. No matter how many 3-star undead he devoured, his soul pool did not expand at all. If I absorb 4-star undead, I should be able to break through to the 3-star soul realm. It's just that a 4-star soul is too powerful. Trying to kill a 4-star undead with my own strength is no different from throwing my life away. Murong Yu's face was filled with helplessness. Murong Yu's soul was not like his cultivation, which could cross 2 realms to kill enemies. Although he could kill 3-star undead with a 2-star soul now, this was already his limit. Once he encountered a 4-star undead, he could only run for his life. However, he still had to kill 4-star undead, otherwise his strength would not be able to improve. Of course, there were other ways, such as waiting for Murong Yu's cultivation to break through to a higher realm, like the Holy King or Ancestor Sage. In that case, coupled with his soul attack, it should be easy to kill 4-star souls. However, it was too difficult for Murong Yu to break through. Without a powerful object for him to devour, it would be even more difficult for him to break through if he relied on slow cultivation. Go deep into the undead kingdom and kill 4-star undead. Murong Yu gritted his teeth and then shot toward the undead kingdom. Murong Yu, who was moving forward, suddenly stopped and then looked ahead with a look of surprise. Just now, a terrifying aura that made his soul tremble suddenly appeared out of thin air. When that huge and terrifying aura swept past him, all the hair on Murong Yu's body stood on end. A sense of danger shrouded his heart in an instant. His trembling soul also gave birth to a sense of fear. In an instant, Murong Yu's huge divine thought shot out like a torrent, sweeping in all directions. However, he didn't find anything. This was a powerful existence that even Murong Yu could not detect. Murong Yu's expression changed abruptly. With a thought, he quickly retreated. However, just as he was about to travel through the void, he suddenly stopped and looked in front of him in shock. Not far in front of him, a young man was looking at Murong Yu with a smile. The young man was dressed in green. His face was bare, and he was extremely handsome. However, he simply stood there without any energy fluctuations coming from his body as he looked at Murong-yu with a smile. Murong-yu's mind instantly tensed up, and in an instant he increased his strength to the limit. Although this young man had a smile on his face, he didn't reveal any energy fluctuations from his body. However, Murong-yu could sense a dangerous aura coming from his body. Moreover, it was an extremely dangerous aura. Murong-yu knew that this young man was definitely a super expert. His strength was beyond the range of his senses. "You're an undead?" After retreating a certain distance, Murong-yu stood still and asked the young man with a solemn face. It wasn't that he didn't want to be too far away, but he knew that the young man wouldn't let him go too far. Moreover, with the young man's strength, as long as he wanted to kill him, Murong-yu would definitely not be able to resist. Hearing this, the young man's face suddenly showed a look of shock. "Boy, I didn't expect you to be able to see my identity. Is the gap between me and the human race so big?" As he spoke, the young man looked at himself. His appearance was the same as a human's, but it was very different from some illusory undead. Anyone who saw him would think that he was a human and not an undead soul. But how could Murong-yu see through him at a glance? "Boy, your soul power is very good. I like you more and more." Without waiting for Murong-yu to answer, the young man laughed. Murong-yu's face became gloomy. "What do you want?" The young man's face showed a smile. "Boy, you killed so many of my clansmen. Why are you still asking me?" Murong-yu narrowed his eyes slightly and stepped back a few steps, looking at the other party with a vigilant face. He even had the idea of immediately hiding in Hichu Luoshu and escaping. However, he knew that with the strength of a young man, when he entered Hichu Luoshu, the other party would immediately rush in. At that time, they would have a great battle in Hichu Luoshu. Seeing Murong-yu's vigilant look and retreating, the young man immediately laughed. "Boy, I have no malice towards you. You killed those undead. It's no big deal. On the contrary, I will give you an unusually great fortune." Murong-yu looked at the young man and sneered again and again. Even if an ordinary person ran to him and said that he would give him a great fortune, Murong-yu would not believe it. Not to mention that the other party was a strong undead. "I'm sorry, I appreciate your kindness, but I won't accept it. I'm leaving, please get out of the way." Murong-yu snorted coldly, and then his figure flickered, and he was about to leave. However, he had just taken a step when a young man was in front of him again, blocking his way. "Boy, I've been secretly observing you for a long time, and I like you very much. You have to take this great fortune, even if you don't want it." The young man still had a smile on his face. However, he had already made his move. He stretched out his big hand and grabbed Murong-yu in the air. Reverse time and space. Murong-yu roared in his heart, and the power of time gushed out, enveloping the young man, trying to reverse time and space. Caught off guard, the young man had no time to react at all, and his whole body had been reversed to another time and space. Moreover, Murong-yu was extremely insidious. He only reversed the time and space of the young man's upper body. As a result, the young man's body was in two different time and space. The moment he reversed time and space, Murong-yu fled, shuttling through the void into the distance. He did not enter Hichu Luoshu because he knew that this time the reversal of time and space might only be able to stop the young man for a moment. Sure enough, Murong-yu had not flown far when a young man had returned from the other time and space. Murong-yu's reversal of time and space had no effect on him. The law of time, the law of space, and the sage of the soul. Boy, I like you more and more. You have to accept this great fortune. After the young man shattered the power of time and returned from the other time and space, he took a step out, and then his figure flashed, disappearing on the spot. When he reappeared, he was already behind Murong-yu. He stretched out his big hand and grabbed at Murong-yu's back. Looking at Murong-yu's back, the smile on the young man's face became more and more brilliant. He simply liked Murong-yu too much. In particular, Moron, you had a powerful physical body. The law of time and the law of space, especially the law of time, was an ability that he dreamed of. Although Moron Yu's reversal of time and space did not seem to have caused him any harm. However, that was because he was too powerful, and Moron Yu's power of time was too small. Otherwise, if Moron Yu had reversed time and space for a long time, he would have been strangled by time and space. Reversal of time and space. Seeing that the young man was grabbing at him, Moron Yu reversed time and space again. However, the young man had suffered once, so how could he suffer a second time? Therefore, he shook his big hand and directly shattered Moron Yu's power of time. However, at this moment, the yin-yang cauldron descended from the sky and fiercely suppressed him. Bang! The young man sneered, then flicked his finger, and a force hit the yin-yang cauldron fiercely. Then there was an ear-piercing sound of metal clashing. Then the yin-yang cauldron flew far away like a kite with a broken string. Moron Yu's mind felt like it had been hit by a huge hammer, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Teleport back to the realm of the gods. Moron Yu knew that this young man was the strongest opponent he had ever met. Therefore, he did not hesitate and wanted to use the origin energy of the realm of the gods to teleport back to the realm of the gods. Teleportation talisman? Just as Moron Yu was about to teleport, a look of surprise flashed across the young man's face. After a low cry, he clenched his big hand in the air. As a result, Moron Yu felt as if he'd bumped into an incomparably hard steel plate. The void was sealed, and Moron Yu could not teleport. He could not teleport back to the realm of the gods, nor could he travel through space, nor could he enter the Hichu Luoshu world. The wings of devil appeared, and Moron Yu spread them and was about to fly away. However, at this moment, the young man's big hand grabbed at the air. Moron Yu's face changed dramatically, and the Hichu Luoshu was summoned, surrounding him. He held a heaven-shaking arrow in each hand, and he stabbed it at the young man's hand. You have quite a lot of magic treasures. The young man sneered, and his big hand grabbed at him without dodging. Whoosh, whoosh. Moron Yu felt a strong surge of energy, and then the web between his thumb and index finger was torn, and blood spurted out like a fountain. The two heaven-shaking arrows in his hands had already left his hands. At the same time, the young man had already grabbed Moron Yu. Like a vast ocean of energy, it surged into Moron Yu's body. In the blink of an eye, all of Moron Yu's strength had been sealed. Soul Tyrant Fist, Soul Devouring Slash, Star Luo, Annihilating Sky. Although Moron Yu was anxious, he did not panic, and the soul attack that he had prepared long ago was strangled and fiercely blasted at the young man. The young man suddenly laughed. Boy, I am the Undead King, and you want to show off your soul attack in front of me? As he spoke, he did not make any resistance. Therefore, Moron Yu's soul attack fiercely slashed at his body. However, what made Moron Yu despair was that his soul attack was like a clay ox entering the sea, and after slashing at the young man's body, there was no sound. Soul attacks had no effect on the young man. All kinds of other methods could not hurt the young man. Moron Yu fell into the biggest crisis in history. Was he alive or dead? What was the great fortune of the Undead King? Chapter 1392. Although the undead was a spiritual body, they also had a soul like other life forms. The physical body of the undead was condensed from the power of the soul. It was not a physical body, but it was not a soul either. Therefore, when the undead king was about to possess Moron Yu's body, his soul came out of the sheath and rushed straight into Moron Yu's soul space. Because Moron Yu's power was sealed, and the undead king was much stronger than him, his power of the soul could not resist the undead king's invasion. Therefore, Moron Yu did not waste his energy to resist the undead king's power of the soul. Therefore, the undead king's soul entered Moron Yu's soul space in an instant. After the soul left the body, the undead king's body, which was condensed from the power of the soul, did not have any breath of life. It sat on the ground like an old monk. If someone came in at this time, they could easily destroy this body. Of course, the premise was that the undead king's soul did not return to the body in time. A body without a soul, even if it contained a huge amount of power, it could not attack or defend because there was no consciousness to command it. Murong Yu finally understood why the undead king did not directly possess him outside. Even though he could abandon this body after he possessed it, he was still able to do so. The undead king probably did not have full confidence that he could successfully possess it, so he did it in his own territory. What a big soul pool! As soon as the undead king's soul entered Murong Yu's soul space, he saw the soul pool under Murong Yu's soul that was close to 6,000 miles in size. 2-star 9 heavens, a soul pool close to 6,000 miles in size, far exceeded that of an ordinary 3-star soul saint. The soul pool of an ordinary 3-star soul saint was only 3,000 miles in size. This boy is extraordinarily talented. He is a monstrous existence. However, the more monstrous he is, the better. After today, his body will belong to me. The undead king looked at Murong Yu's soul with excitement. Boy, you can rest in peace. The undead king laughed grimly. His figure flashed, and he directly pounced on Murong Yu's soul to devour it. You want to devour me? Take over my body? Murong Yu sneered. He was definitely not a person who would sit and wait for death. As long as there was a sliver of a chance, he would resist to the end. Don't tell me you still have the ability to resist. The undead king sneered and quickly rushed over. If we were outside, I would indeed be no match for you. But in my soul space, I am the master. Flame of primal chaos. Murong Yu roared, and the flame of primal chaos began to burn in his soul space. In an instant, his entire spiritual space was filled with the flame of primal chaos. Furthermore, under Murong Yu's control, even more flame of primal chaos burned towards the undead king's soul. This was the only way Murong Yu could think of to resist, and besides the flame of primal chaos, he really had no other way to destroy the undead king's soul. Even if it was the flame of primal chaos, Murong Yu was not confident. However, Murong Yu could only do so. He did not want to sit and wait for death. Insignificant skill, you're simply overestimating yourself. You think you can burn my soul with just these flames? The undead king sneered. An incomparably huge power immediately gushed out, charging towards the endless flame of primal chaos. Rumble wherever the power passed. Even the flame of primal chaos quickly collapsed. It was not that the flame of primal chaos was not strong enough, nor was it that the undead king's power could easily destroy the flame of primal chaos. It was because these flame of primal chaos were too weak. In the end, it was because Murong Yu's strength was too weak. If he reached the Holy King realm, the flame of primal chaos he shot out would probably be able to directly annihilate the undead king's soul. Space and time rules could not do anything to the undead king's soul. Even the flame of primal chaos could not stop him. Murong Yu was really anxious now. However, until the last moment, Murong Yu did not want to self-destruct. Thus, he continued to control the flame of primal chaos to attack. Although he could not do anything to the other party, he could block it for a while. In fact, Murong Yu did not block the undead king for long. After a few breaths, the undead king had already pounced in front of Murong Yu's soul. Then, he stretched out his big hand and directly grabbed Murong Yu's soul. Swoosh! How could Murong Yu's soul be captured without a fight? In an instant, it turned into a ray of light and rushed out. The undead king immediately chased after it. Even if Murong Yu's soul left the soul space and physical body, he could not directly occupy Murong Yu's physical body, because the physical body was still Murong Yu's. Only after erasing Murong Yu's soul could he enter Murong Yu's body. Chi. In the process of chasing, the undead king directly made his move. A powerful and terrifying soul power was shot out by the undead king, covering the sky and earth as it strangled Murong Yu. Murong Yu's speed was fast, But the undead king's soul was much stronger than his. In the blink of an eye, Moronyu's soul was tied up by hundreds of millions of strands of soul power. Like a rice dumpling, it was firmly trapped and was pulled in front of the undead king. Boy, be obedient and let me devour you. Maybe I'll leave a bit of your consciousness. Otherwise, I'll completely erase you. The undead king sneered. He stretched out his big hand and grabbed Moronyu in his hand. Before the undead king's voice fell, he swallowed Moronyu and was about to refine him. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.